like the program that I use that says that we're live. No. I'm posting this episode 7. I don't. No, I actually didn't. No, I didn't mess it up. Luckily now, I think I've did it enough. Maybe. Yeah. Volunteer. Yeah. Goddamn volley podcast. The fuck. That's what it is. Should have left it to the paid guy. He's fucking laughing. All right, we're live. All right, so welcome to episode 7, West Virginia Responders Podcast. I got Captain Daft here helping me out with this one, and guest tonight we got Chief Adam Hoffman from Brewston, Brandonville. You thought I was gonna mess that up, Brandon. You're looking way hard at me. I said the first part, and you're like, do you remember? There's 2 parts to that. I gotta like look up. I'm like, what's my line? Like looking over for a cue
Yeah,
card.
man, you nailed it, though. You got it.
Yeah. All right. So, Adam, for people that's not watching, not watching, people that don't know you that's watching for the first time, go ahead and give your title, maybe how long you've been up there, just as a little quick summary, and then we'll actually go ahead and hop into your career.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm Adam Hoffman, currently a firefighter serving chief here at Brewston Fire. Here in 21 years left. Almost that long. So I've been kind of all over the state, and other states too. So that's kind of my background.
Okay. So, did you you grow up? You grew up in the firehouse?
Actually, first generation firefighter. My dad's a banker. My mom's an English teacher.
Okay.
And nobody in my family's ever been in the fire service. I'm the first one.
They thought you're fucking crazy. They said, you want to go inside of the house? He said, we get out of the house when it's on fire.
Right. Yeah. They didn't understand it at all, but they're great. They've been supportive. My mom, as they do, worries all the time. I think she still worries. I'm almost 40. She still stays up nights worrying about me, I think, but they had no idea why I wanted to do this. I didn't see the appeal, but sometimes you find what you do.
No, that's awesome, man. Yeah. I also first generation. I don't ever list. When I talk, I try to keep. Obviously everybody knows I run at Westover. That's not a, that's not a secret. But sometimes I'll reference other departments. I don't always mention it. Where they're at. Where I grew up. It's in Morgantown, but it's a little off a beaten path. And the department, man, it was just a really rough department. If you showed up, the guy that ran into your house that was drunk might have actually had a lower BAC than the firefighters that were showing up to come help. And it was just a rough time, man.
Yeah.
It's just, and it was sad to see, because I mean they had like the right idea that like they were there to help, but just I always have this saying, like, be the firefighter that you want to respond to your emergency.
Yeah, man. And I grew up I grew up in Wheeling, and in that area. I actually grew up in the city limits of Wheeling, and my first fire department, really small, rural department, but like really dedicated, good guys. I had kind of the opposite experience of that. It's like, they ran 30 calls a year, but they were on it for 30 calls a year.
Dang, 30 calls, man.
Yeah, man. crazy, you know. But I ended up leaving that department for and that department actually went under just funding and membership and stuff
Yeah.
years ago. And I went to Stone Church VFD Company 3 up in High County, and
Okay.
man, learned from some great guys up there. Joe Hall was the chief then, and just had lots of experience. A lot of older guys, 40s and 50s, that were teaching us young kids that were too stubborn to listen, and but raised us up the right way, and they ran combination. They were Randy and all along, but did it right. A little bit bigger than that, than the small department, but they taught us the right way. I had like a totally different experience, super positive. I was a stubborn kid, too hard headed for my own good. And when you're 17, 18 years old, whatever. But it's they put me on the right track, for doing the job the right way, and so I feel really fortunate for those guys, because I probably wouldn't have stayed in it had it not been for that. I joined at 17 on a whim. One of my friends in high school, he said, "Hey man, why don't you come join the fire department?" I'm like, "The fire department? What do I want to do with the fire department?" He said, "Yeah, you'll love it, and check it out, man. You'll love it. You're that kind of guy, Hey, And I didn't, So after 4 more times they pestered me, I finally came down, um, on a meeting night or whatever, and enjoyed. They gave me a pager, got me some gear. Of course I didn't know anything,
Fuck, you were
And,
big stunt when you had the pager.
yeah, man. Oh, that's
Yeah, once you had
true.
the pager, it was a sealed deal.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, for sure. That old minute or two, man. And I got home that night. I got home late, and I think my parents were already asleep when I got home. And I keep in mind, this is a pretty by a slower department, right? And we don't have a
Right.
ton of calls. And so I get home probably 9:30, 10 o'clock that night, and I'm all jazzed up. And I'm like, "Yeah, this is okay. Maybe I can do this. Yeah, this is pretty cool. Those guys were cool, and I could learn this. I could do something here." And about 2:30 in the morning, that pager went off, and my jumped out of bed, went, trying to get dressed, running down the steps from my bedroom. My dad woke my dad up. He's like, "What in the hell are you doing?" Because he didn't even know I joined the fire department.
Yeah.
So I'm running out of the house at 2:30 in the morning on this car wreck. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm literally hours into this. And I said, "I got a fire call." He goes, "You got a what?" Because he didn't even know I joined the fire department
Yeah.
yet, because I hadn't even seen him yet. And so I run out of the house, go on this car wreck, and come back, an hour and a half or whatever hour later, and he's still up, and he's just mad as a hornet with me. He's like, "What in the world are you doing?" And so then at like 3 in the morning, I'm sitting there trying to explain to my dad why I ran out the house. You know, I think ever since then, man, I was so excited. This is cool. So
Yeah, it's kind of a weird process to explain to people too, that you're about to go hang out with a bunch of guys and girls at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the interstate because somebody couldn't drive their fucking car. That's like the
yeah,
yeah, to like sum that up. It's so weird because um I tell you that, man, like it's a feeling that you can't explain, you know, still, you guys been in a lot longer than I have, and I'm sure that you still get those butterflies in your stomach. I this day and age, there's still some guys that run pagers, of course, but most guys now,
yeah,
I am responding, what active 911 or whatever it is.
hmm
Yeah, there's 105. Yeah, like
yeah,
it's not it's like before you got a Dollar General, you got a Dollar Tree, you got a Family Dollar. They're all the same. You get the same shit there.
yeah,
Yeah, you get the same shit, and that's the way it is. And you get that text message that's like structure fire, and you're like, "Oh shit, structure fire!" Even though you
yeah,
ran hundreds of structure fires, you're still like a kid on Christmas Day, the first time
yeah,
you walk into that room and there's all those presents sitting there, and it's
yeah,
hard to explain to people that you know you like getting up out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, for free, for
yeah.
free. I mean,
Right. It's
it's the
it's not an
craziest
easy
thing.
sell, right? It's not an easy
No,
sell
yeah,
for
like you
recruiting
may
folks, man.
have to be out here at about 5 degrees. Um,
Right.
you're not getting
Yeah.
paid. You're
Yeah.
not getting
You're gonna
paid. You're
work
like,
your
what the
butt
hell do you
off.
mean I get paid?
You're gonna freeze in the snow. You're gonna sweat in the sun. You're gonna
Right,
be up all night, and still have to go to work tomorrow.
right.
And a couple hundred hours of training get you going, and then monthly meetings and trainings, and work nights and all that. But the pay's fantastic. The good news is I don't have to do it. I don't do every year, so that's
Yeah.
I guess. But uh, you know, but yeah, I fell in love with it from the beginning. I think it's like a lot of young guys. There's an adrenaline kick there. When you're
Absolutely.
16, 17, 18 years old, you get into it. And it's cool, the sirens and and all that. And I find it's a lot less of that. It's a whole lot more just like being able to help and do stuff.
Absolutely.
I hate feeling helpless. I hate having some knowledge or skills, even if it's just a
Hmm.
little bit. Being able to, I feel guilty sitting at home going like, I could help, but like you know
Yeah.
I'm not going to. Or I'm
Y-
too tired, or I'm too.
Yeah. And it's so crazy that um you're getting less and less of that though. Every
Yeah.
every year you have more guys retiring and less people volunteering. And you have departments, you have sometimes what, three, four guys that are really
Hmm.
carrying a department on their back.
Hmm.
And it's crazy, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, come out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you got to be up at 5 to pick somebody's grandma up off the floor. You
Hmm.
know, if you don't show up, who's going to help get grandma off the floor? You know,
Yeah.
at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, I, I I don't think that any of us do it for the thank you. You know that at the end of the day, I mean, because we've all went on calls and you helped somebody and you felt like that they didn't give a fuck if you were there or not. You
Mhm.
know, so, but at the end of
Yeah.
the day, you do it because, you know, that's just kind of people that we are. It's a weird way
Yeah.
to explain that. It's a,
Yeah. Yeah. So we're all our first due is inside West Virginia,
right.
but we border, Mon County
Hmm.
uh, to our west. We've got Fayette County to our north, Garrett County, Maryland to our east. And so,
Right.
we're running in three counties, uh, not pretty regularly,
Right.
and both directions. Here is huge. We have 158 square miles
Phew.
in our first due. So it's a big area. And we border. I think the last time I looked at it, seven departments, six departments that routinely respond to waste for us. So yeah, it's a challenge up here because you have a lot of states and a lot of interstates, a lot of and then the radio systems, of course, work with each other, and that you know you
Yeah.
know how that goes.
Yeah.
It's all, I mean, it's all
Yeah.
I've been here 10 years or so, maybe 11 years in Brewston. Um, I traveled a little bit. I lived west for a while, and then I lived in Mon County for a while. I was at Cheat Lake for a minute.
Okay.
Lived in Cheat Lake, and then I moved up to Brewston, and I'm a transplant here. So I love the community, and I love
Awesome.
the area up here. It's a beautiful outside area, and lots of open space, and, and all of that. And when I kind of settled up here in Brewston, I came down to the fire department, and these guys are my family now. All my family still, most of my family's still in Wheeling, and
Yeah.
so these guys are my second family here in Brewston, and they take care of us. And so
Um.
last year we did 239 here,
Okay.
but that's a little deceiving. So I think out of that 239, I think we ran like 7 fire alarms.
Okay.
So we don't have a lot of alarm property up here, but we ran 42 fires last
Yeah.
year and about 150 car wrecks. So
How many of those how many of them were first due? Just as a
most of them, I think,
Most of them
out
were
of
first due, right?
239, those out of 42 fires, I think 36 of them or so were first
Okay,
due,
that's
and that's all comers.
pretty
That's
damn good.
commercial fires. That's
Right,
vehicle fires, structure fires.
right,
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of everything. But
That's still,
that was
still not
yeah,
bad though. That's and you see some departments that um I would like to say I think last year I think we read about 750. Okay, I can't
mm,
say that. We had a CAD for 750 calls.
yeah,
At the end of the day, that's how that goes. We do have alarms. The good thing is that I can say is that like in our first due, we don't have that stupid alarm that goes off every day because yeah. So that's a good thing. We do obviously get toned out for some mutual aid fire alarms. Um, but I'd like to think that we our calls are pretty decent, solid calls. We don't run a lot of like false structure fires. Normally it's we get one and it's first due. I'm like, man, it's pretty decent fire.
yeah,
We run like we're in an odd situation because obviously we're in West Denver, we're in the middle of a city, but we also go out. I think it's 9-10 miles out Fairmont Road,
hmm
almost to the Marion County line. So that it throws a little bit of a challenge that I think we kind of get thrown into the category with like city firefighters. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like you know how
yeah,
that goes. Like, oh, you guys don't know
yeah,
what to do it. They're in a hydrant right across the street, right? Well, we do have to deal with some, you know, with some dump tanks every once in a while. That's a challenge, and that's one thing that I'm thankful for is that we kind of do get thrown into a variety of like different situations, and you guys
yeah,
definitely deal with that up there. Uh, uh, you know, you kind of it's way different fighting when you know you have a limited water source right across the street
yeah,
to having 10 minutes, or delays, in between your water source, and you got to really kind of
yeah,
plan that
yeah. And
out a little bit differently.
sometimes we get lucky and we do. We have probably 30% of our area tied in now, but
Okay.
you know, that's never that's
No,
hard to
no, no. This yeah, it
happen.
never goes like that. Yeah.
So, rural water supply is definitely, it's always something that's on our mind. Last year we had a semi-fire. Last year we had 2,000 gallons of water.
Um.
Vehicle fire last year from like 9 or 10 departments, full of paper. So, it was on the interstate, and so it was water tunnel after water tunnel after water tunnel. We're trying to get, you know, that, 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 oh, it was a huge amount. And they pushed it 6 weeks up down and everything. So that's another challenge for us is that, they're on hydrants on the highway. So anything out there, you're bringing your own. So,
Yeah, that creates a challenge. It definitely does when you yeah, because you get out there and you get that vehicle fire and you're like, man, it's gonna be a simple little vehicle fire. And you get out here and it's not. You always run into that. Like dispatch can only tell you what they're told. They're not there.
right.
We don't. Every once in a while, you're like, God damn it, this. You get this bullshit dispatch and you get out and it's nothing what you were told.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, better get some help on the road.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that was one that they did a pretty good job on that fire, or as good as they could do. But it
right.
just, once it started, it was just darn near impossible.
Well, that poses like like I said, you never know what kind of situation you're going to run into because you
Yeah,
never know what the payload is. You never know.
right.
You never know what's in that trailer. You can have, something that's way more flammable, or
Mhm.
or
And that
or
was
you
just
can have some. Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. You run
yeah,
into something that's all in paper. It's just like
yeah,
that.
right. Yeah, we yeah. So our majority are going to be big waxings, and so I think we ran 150 some vehicle accidents out of that 240 last year. So that that's our busiest area, and of course we with the mountain up here and the snow and everything else, a lot of those snow wrecks aren't they're not the crazy vehicle accidents, but we do run a bunch of those. We run a bunch of commercial vehicle accidents, so that's one of our kind of key challenges when we're talking about you know what services we have to provide vehicle extrication and rescue and vehicle rescue is definitely on our list of things that we have to be ready for. That's something that we see.
Yeah. Yeah, was that a yeah? Because I mean, you said what 32 calls to yeah.
Yeah, so my Stone Church in High County was running more than that. They were
Okay.
150 probably or so.
Right. So
They're a little
this is
busier, but
what
that was
third
fire and
department
EMS.
technically.
What's that?
Third department. This is your third
Yeah,
one
that
that you.
yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they were a little busier, but they were running fire and EMS.
Okay. Yeah.
But like up here, there's always cultural quirks, right? Where everybody does something that their own way, right? And
Absolutely.
that's tough to adapt to. But there's only so many ways to fight fire, and I
Yeah.
found that. I mean, you put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, right? And yeah, so like we all have our own quirks and the way we do things. But I
Yeah.
think we all have a lot more in common than we have that separates us in the way that the way things go. You don't. There's little operational things that you have to learn about every area, and little quirks about your district and like what hazards are there and what you see more fires or more calls or car wrecks or more medical calls. But that's all. That's all. That's easy, right? You can adapt to that kind of thing. Uh, a little larger there,
Well, what
and
about active? Because I mean, that roster you could have 100
right,
people, and
right,
three sets of gear don't have
right.
10 years of cobwebs on top of them.
Yeah, our roster here, we're pretty good about keeping that up to date. Right now, I think we're at 22 and all pretty active, right? And so that's you know, everybody works too much. Everybody, has their own
Absolutely.
family
Yeah.
stuff, and
Yep.
I've got guys working 78 hours a week, and they're not going to make every call, and that's life, But I'd say we have about 22 that are solidly active that I see regularly that are on call.
Yeah.
We're pretty fortunate, and they're a solid group of guys here and ladies here. So yeah, yeah, John, but it's we're more folks. Like, yeah, we'll have to fight in here. We get to the bunker here first. Well, it's a burden, especially in the daytime, and but
Everybody
it,
suffers. It's everybody.
yeah,
It just seems like that Wednesday. That random Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and everybody gets off at 2.
mm-hmm.
These fucking tones get dropped for two. This doesn't happen, but two structure fires, and you have that one random department that just had 4 guys that are off that are about probably shitting their pants because they're the only company that's responding. And it's a challenge that we had another guest. Uh, you know, we had another guest on that was really talking about the funding and stuff. And I think honestly, what it's going to come down to, guys, is you're going to have to staff. You're going to have probably 2 guys staffed in each department eventually. It's just the call volume is going up, and like we said, the volunteerism is just it's going down, and the guys that are running every call. I mean, it's a lot to
Yeah,
ask of guys that have a family life to
yeah,
work and to run 80-90% of the calls.
absolutely. And part of it too, though, is you got to change your tactics, right?
Right.
So when we talk about we talk about what I'm talking about, what's the tactics that you got
Exactly. Yep.
to
Yep. Yep.
playing that stuff. We just went to a new host leg for software, and
Right.
the idea was it's a lot easier easier to deploy by yourself, than what we were doing
So
before. And
absolutely.
example, right? So
Yeah.
we just vacation, and I think it was last Thursday. Um, we got a vehicle fire,
Hmm.
showed up, tanker. We had engine crew. I don't know how we did anything done with what,
Yeah.
but um, the,
Oh, damn.
that was it. It was me. It was me and the captain.
Yeah, you guys are staring at each other. You're like, "Were you gonna do something?" And they're like, "I
I,
don't know. You gonna do
I
something?"
thought you were going to do something. I
Yeah,
don't
you're gonna
know. I don't
flip.
know what to
You're over
do.
there flipping a coin,
Right. Like
playing
I mean,
rock paper scissors.
so we rolled up to this, just rocking semi fire, and the small crew tactics. We stretched across the median
Right.
and fire out in 5 minutes. 5 minutes flat.
Wow. That's
And part of that is luck. I'm not going to brag on it. Be like,
yeah,
hey, we're awesome. Part of that's luck. Got
yeah,
it at the right time, whatever. But you know, you have to train and plan for that small crew operation. 15 guys. That was at like noon on a Thursday or something, and so you're not going to have 15 guys to And we had mutual aid coming, of course, but it always feels good when you get to turn around and say, no, we're good. You know?
yeah. But you've been in station before, and you get that call. You're like, "Man, we're about to go. We're about to go put the fire out in somebody else's due."
Right,
And you want
right,
to get canceled. You're like, "Those son of a bitches think they can do it themselves, huh?"
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And all credit, I was running the pump on that one, so all credit to our cap Ian for putting a knock on that because I was trying to help him a little bit, but
Yeah.
I was kind of stuck on the truck there a little bit, so all
Who is
credit
your
to him
captain
for
up
that.
there?
So Ian Kent is our captain up
Ian
here,
Kent. Okay.
and
So
but that
give a
so some of
shout
that
out to
is like,
Ian there, putting a good knock on it.
yeah, heck yeah, man, and
You gotta
yeah,
watch
some of it's
throwing
luck.
that kind of credit out there, man. He may not be able to walk through that garage door next week, though. You
That's
know what
right,
I mean?
that's right, that's right.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. To be able to squish
Yeah,
that head in there, that's what happens.
yeah, yeah. No,
But
I was.
that's awesome, man.
But you just have to. That's plan A for us. Is that we're going to have a small crew, and we're going to do what we can do with the small crew and call for
Right.
help. And you just got to know that, and that's part of just knowing your, especially daytime. But I don't think it's just us. That's a lot of departments across our area. I think. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We've switched some stuff around. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you got to find something that works for you, right? Because like not something that we runs, gonna help Washington District, and something that that you guys are running, is not
Yeah.
gonna help Briston. So like we ran into that situation where, like you were saying, you got a two man, you got one, you got a driver and you got a mass man, and you're pulling up and this car fire is rocking, and you know we ran into that situation where you're sitting here taking an extra, 2 minutes stretching line, So we actually switched ours over. We're just flat laying our trash line. We switched
Mm-hmm,
over to Cleveland. Uh,
mm-hmm,
and we like it because, we went over it, unsnap it, set it on the ground, spread it, let the water go. It starts coiling. Boom. I'm not sitting here trying to stretch line, and it's you never right because you never know when you're going to run into that situation where you're trying to drag hose, in a parking lot full of cars, right? I mean,
yeah.
you
Right.
never know when you're going
Right.
to run into that
And you don't
situation where
have 100 feet to go
right, you
out,
don't have a
in
hundred
one
feet, and
straight
that's
direction.
a
Right.
great thing that we ran.
Right.
That you said you guys are switching to different lays on your engine, right, for even
Mm-hmm.
fighting fire is you see departments go over that where they're practicing, how to do shorter lays, right? Because you go and we've all went on that house that's their fucking yard's 10 feet by 10 feet. The house is literally on the street. You can about drive by and put your hand out the window and hit their, their doorbell.
Mm-hmm.
And you have, 200 feet of hose line. Right. Yeah.
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 Well, we ran into, and not that we're doing everything right, right? Like we're always looking
Oh,
for
here
better
we
ways to
go.
do
Here we
it.
go. Adam's
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna write it down for you guys. Get your paper
Yeah.
out. He's like, you guys
No,
get a car
no.
fire later. He's like,
We're,
it's
we're,
what
we're,
you
you know,
do.
we're always looking for a better, more efficient
Right.
way to
No,
do
I
stuff.
got you. And you
We
got
ran
to
into one
experiment,
last
right?
year.
I mean,
Yeah.
and your guys got to like it because you could say, this is a plan. This is a way you're going to do it. And your guys get out here and they're like, this shit ain't fucking working.
Right.
And
Well,
that's
we
one of
ran
the
into,
great
yeah,
things with, with
absolutely.
you being chief that you even understand, like just because you say on paper, wow, this is going to work. I,
Yeah.
believe me, you're out there on the lines and you're doing it yourself. So that's also different because every department runs into, well, not every department, sorry, some departments run into where, maybe some of their office, they have enough guys, that are staffing the truck and their main officers, upper positions, or, they're hanging out, but they're setting up the trucks, they're setting up their lays. This is the way we're going to run everything. But right, they're not. Yeah, they're these guys out here running into problems. Like, man, this lay's not working. This setup's not working. We're running into the same issue every single time we go on this call, and they're bitching, but the guys are like, well, this should be working. What are you guys doing wrong? But it's great that you're out there in the front lines, and if something's not
Well,
working,
we, when we did that, we actually, said, hey, take if somebody came in. I think it was, I think it was,
Okay.
there's a better way to do this. And I said, okay, well, let's play around a little bit. So
Right.
we got together and we tried like 4 different cross lay loads one night here in the firehouse. I mean, I stick the load. We were done pulling all these off, and we stacked it this way and we yanked it all off. Then we stacked it a different way and yanked it all off. And we finally, then we went. I think we wanted to try the Minuteman, and
Hmm.
we loaded one cross lay on one truck and said, this is our Minuteman. We want to take it out and test it, see if it works like we think it will,
Right.
and everybody kind of took to it, and that's how we ended up with that one. And so, but tomorrow we could come in and say, hey, we found this way better way to do it,
Hmm.
and we'll do it differently, and but one of the things, what's that? No, go. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. Yeah. Well, listen, if you're depending on me for all the good ideas, we're in big trouble because
Hmm.
like 90% of mine are flops, right? So,
Listen, Brent.
right,
Listen, Brent. He's got that shit copyrighted, and he's got royalties on that. So, like, you
yeah,
start
right.
stealing these damn ideas, you're gonna be cutting him a check.
Listen, listen. I wish I had all the great ideas, man. I'd be a rich man,
Right,
but
but from what I
I,
think he's saying though is your guys probably love it because and maybe that may come down to you too, maybe being a little bit of a younger chief. Some departments run into that really shitty situation with the fire service where this is work for us for this amount of time. We're not changing it.
six most
Like
dangerous six most dangerous words in the service, man. We've always done it this way,
absolutely but it's
and
crazy because just because you've done it that way, I don't feel like there's really each department does their own thing, right? So
mm-hmm,
something that works for us doesn't work for everybody else. So it's kind of hard to
mm-hmm,
judge on that sometimes. But it's also like just because it worked doesn't mean it was the right way to do it, right? Like, because like
right,
you
and
said,
it may not.
sometimes you get lucky. You get
Yeah,
lucky
and
and it
things
didn't
change.
blow up in your face.
And things change. Your staffing changes. Your territory changes. Your
Right.
engines or your vehicles change, right? And that's just part of it. If you can come up with a better way to do it, then do it the
Hmm.
better way. Why work harder, right? Like let's
Absolutely.
let's do it as smart and as sleek as you can because we're not we don't get too many opportunities to get it right. If you get a second chance on a fire, you're lucky, right? Usually it's you get one. And,
Right. And the next time you're talking about that conversation is when you guys get back and you're debriefing or whatever, and you're like, I'm not
mm-hmm.
gonna lie, I thought we were about to fuck that all up, and that
Right,
worked. You're like, that can't happen again. Like we got lucky this time, but that
right,
that was exactly what it was, is luck. But it's I think it's being able to identify like, hey, we fucked up a little bit, but it worked out. But that can't happen again. I think that's one of the worst things is when you kind of can't admit. I've always said, like, I've always been very upfront. Like, if you see me doing something and it's gonna get myself or somebody else hurt, please say something. Like,
right,
yeah, like
absolutely, right.
absolutely. Like I've that's a thing that I think that maybe a lot of people don't do sometimes. They're like, man, I'm not gonna go say something to that guy. But they
Right, and
right.
I'm with you on that. I 100% agree with you. Like, and I don't know if that's you just you get used to being wrong enough that you hope somebody questions you. But like, I have time to explain like this. We're
Yeah.
running the show, we're doing something. We're busy. Maybe I
Mhm.
don't have time like this second to explain like why we have to do it this way.
Yeah.
But like, I'm never gonna be mad. You come up and be like, hey, like I think you might be making a mistake, and then like, okay, wait, okay, you're right. Okay, I'm screwing this up. Let's figure out a better way. And like, good, right? Because like I don't. The last thing I want to do is get somebody hurt
Right. But it's
or
good to have that
or
kind of
miss the boat on
relationship,
something.
right? Where
Right,
somebody could say, "Hey, like this ain't working. This what we're
right.
doing's not working. Like, if you're in a fire, this thing's kicking our ass. What
Mm-hmm.
we're doing's not working. Maybe we should, you know, take a different approach at this." I think that one of the, you know, it's with it being such a high stress uh no matter what you're doing, vehicle extrication, fires, you get into some technical stuff, you get tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does it. You get that tunnel vision, and in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
what you're seeing or what you're doing is the right thing.
Yeah, this
But
should be working, right? It's
right, this
worked
should
before.
be
This should be
working.
working.
But then that
Right,
person it could take somebody that doesn't even know what the fuck is going on to be standing there like, I don't think this is right. You know,
right.
and like
Or hey,
it's
there might be a better way to do this if we looked at
right.
going around this other way and doing it instead of the way we're doing it now. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah. It's hard to, I think sometimes people, it's maybe a pride thing where, they don't want to suck it up and be like, you're right, I'm wrong. You know, lo- yeah, yeah. Like, man,
Somebody better tell me.
yeah, they don't tell you, but then they get, you get two guys that are hanging out there and they're like, man, Chief fucked that shit up bad the other night. They're like, why didn't somebody say something? Like, well, I thought about it, but I wouldn't go be the guy that was going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. You got to have the good relationship where you're just like, hey, listen, like I know that I may be a little out of line here, but like I just don't think this is working, Chief. Like, what about this? Like it. And if I feel like if somebody gets pissed off at somebody for giving of making a valid point, maybe a suggestion, not saying like, hey, we're doing it this way. Like, hey, man, I've seen this done a different way, and this kind of worked out a little bit differently. Can we try it like this? I feel like that's all in
Yeah.
wording too, right? Somebody would walk up
Right,
and you're like, Chief,
right,
you're fucking this shit up. Get the fuck out of the
right.
way.
And right, and
Right.
like
Yeah,
a
chaos,
hundred
Chief.
percent,
Yeah.
100%. You're absolutely right. Some of that I think is some EMS experience. One of the things that I've said on every resuscitation for years. If we're working in a rest somewhere,
Mhm.
you get to a point where like you realize we're not winning, right?
Right.
And I've said for years like, hey, what am I missing? What can we try? What can we do? Because I'm out of ideas now. We've tried everything that I could come up. Does anybody else have that?
Mhm.
Ideas, right? And the same thing with a rescue. Rescue calls. Especially some of this really technical stuff. You know, there might be 5 different ways to do it, and I've got one idea. But if there's a better way, by all means, please, because that's you know
Yeah.
we're
So
here to do the best job, not have the biggest head, right? Not have the biggest ego, right? We're here to do the best job,
right,
and yeah,
right.
yeah,
So I'll
and that's
talk some
all tools, right?
So I'll talk some shit on myself here for a second. So I used to be, and I'm okay with this. Like I can admit that, like and I feel like that's a big thing as you as you grow up that you start to like it's, you know that you're matured a little bit when you can look back and say, wow, that was really fucking dumb. Like why
Yeah,
did I have that kind of a mindset? So I used to have that mindset, like we'd be on a car wreck and we'd be doing extrication or something, and you'd have an EMT or paramedic or somebody like, hey, maybe like this or do this like this or this, and you're like, what the fuck did this guy know? This guy's a fucking EMT standing over here. But
mm,
at the end of the day, like I just recently I haven't taken my national registry yet. I got to get that scheduled, but I just completed my EMT class, and it kind of gives you a different perspective on some of those things. Like it's not all about just cutting the car up. It's also about what is going on with that person that's inside of the
right,
car. And I
yep,
used to be a little bit ignorant to the fact of that. That was like, hey, we're the fire department. We're here to cut the car open the fuck out of the way. You know what I
right,
mean? We got the queue on
right,
the front of the truck. Get out of the way. And
right.
like we're not gonna have no yeah. Right. We're not going to have no EMTs, no paramedics up here telling us what to do. But it's like I said, you sometimes you're ignorant to things that you don't know, right? Like you,
Yeah.
you have to,
Well, and this is, I've got
yeah,
a story. I'm not gonna mention any department names, but it was some years ago. I was
mhm,
working, and we had a rollover
yeah,
SUV, and it was laying on the driver's side on its side. It rolled completely over and ended up on the driver's side door,
right,
and the driver was unconscious. And I was playing paramedic that day, and I called in this vehicle, and I'm in there, and we were able to get the passenger out, and the fire department showed up, and I said, hey, you know, we're gonna have to flap the roof down to get the driver out. And they said, no, we'll bring him out through the windshield. Okay, and
yeah,
but there was no way for us to get him around the steering wheel, over the steering wheel to go
right,
out the
right.
windshield. They said, okay, well that's not working. I said, okay, you're gonna have to flap the roof down. They're like, you know, they were polite, but
They're
in a
like,
very nice
hey,
way, like,
listen, fuck off,
hey
bud.
paramedic,
Without,
right? Like,
yeah,
hey paramedic, why don't you stay in your lane
right.
and do another blood pressure, they said, we'll take him,
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
we'll
did you
take him
check
out the
your
back
vitals
window,
every 5 minutes?
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
why don't you just stay?
yeah,
You just keep quiet in that car. We'll get you out eventually.
right,
And they said, we'll take him out the back glass. And I said, well, we're not gonna be able to do that because I can't move the seat.
right.
And because the door was up against the seat latch to lay the seat back. So that's not gonna work. They're like, yeah, no, it'll work, it'll work. And finally, they're like, oh man, I don't know how we're gonna get you out of here. I said, gotta flatten the roof. Like, just take the roof down, and
Right.
he'll come right out of this car. Like, and it was 45 minutes to get him out of this vehicle. And finally, a couple of my guys showed up, and I said, for the love of God, will you please get me out of this SUV because I am all like cramped and hot and sweaty, and
Yeah.
in here with this guy. And I've had time to start an IV, run a liter of fluid, taken 15
Wow.
sets of idle signs, and I
You're
said,
about
will you
to
please
start
pass the
taking your
roof
lunch
so we
break.
can. Right, right. I said, hey, my break's coming up. Like, we got to get out of here so
Yeah,
where I can
yeah.
go get some. You know, I'm about to in shift change. And so we finally flat the roof, and it was just a perfect example to me of sometimes no matter who the person is that you're talking to, they're in a better. They might be, and it wasn't because these guys were dumb or stubborn. It was that I could see what they couldn't see because I was in
Right.
the car and they weren't. And I could just, the only way we're coming out is this way. And they, and some of that was a lesson learned from me on the other side of like,
Uh-huh.
man, good ideas can come from anywhere. You
And
know,
it does. Like I said, I used to have that, and I can admit that I had that mindset a little bit before. It was well, this is our fucking job. That
yeah,
and now I look back, I'm like, I was fucking stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how many times did
yeah,
I probably make an ass of myself? Like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But like, you also don't know people's backgrounds, right? because you're on
Right.
the squad, but you've
Right.
probably they don't know that you could have did more fucking vehicle extrications on the weekend, that you were
Right.
off than this department
Right.
has, in the last 10 years, right? So,
Right. And that's the, you run into that, and you don't know who folks are, right?
right.
And that some of that is just the teamwork aspect of it too. It's a little better up here, like in Brewston, because I do EMS and fire, and I know everybody. But even the guys that are just the ladies and gentlemen up here that just do one or the other, we know each other, and so we
Mhm.
know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and you get into like where
Right.
there's a lot of different people in a lot of different departments, but
Yeah.
so oh yeah, like yeah, he's playing a paramedic today, but like he's got some fire experience, or he's got
Right.
patient experience or whatever. And so you can lean on that folks a little bit to help you,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, hold on a second. So, like, and you talked about that. Like, I can honestly say that, like, I've been on some fires before, and we've had John Thorne there, with EMS, and he's been a humongous asset, not only on the EMS side, but even on the fire side. Like you know, helps out. You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
and it's great, and it's always like when you have like you see that person and you're like, all right, like, if we need something, or like there's a question or something, like, like this guy's here, right? So, like, so give a
Yeah,
little
I
shout out to
remember.
John. Like, I mean, that's a good
Yeah,
thing about him.
absolutely. I remember the first time I used to work for Monty Mess years ago, and
Okay.
I went out on a structure fire standby with City years ago.
Hmm.
And, you remember the chief there? And, I hate if I'm on standby. A little part of me because
Yeah,
like I really want to
yeah,
be,
yeah.
like you know, but like I can't just stand there with my medic bag, be like, okay, I'll just hope none of you
You're
get
like, bro,
hurt,
I'm about to go
right? Like I
steal
got
the
to go do
hairline off this
something,
kid,
right?
right?
Right, like I got to go do something. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna steal nobody's bunker gear, but like so I'm on this fire, and we're they're working, and they're you got guys coming out of the inside, or whatever. They're coming
Right.
out, and I'm changing bottles out. I'm giving bottles water and changing cylinders out,
That's awesome.
and
Yeah.
so he goes over to me and goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, just being busy." Like I was like I'm you know
Sorry, man. Like,
just chip it in. And he's like,
yeah.
"Nah, man." He goes, "That's awesome." He's like, "I've never seen an EMS guy do that before." And I'm like, "Well, honestly, I'm just kind of jealous because like I'd rather put on a helmet and go play, but
Yeah.
at least I could do something."
Like,
Well,
I'll tell you what I can get, right?
I'll take whatever I get. If it's changing cylinders and handing out water, I guess that's what I can do. But
Yeah. So, we'll take a question from the chat real quick, Brandon.
yeah,
Uh, Chris Myers wanted to know, how much of the interstate do y'all run? Like, I
17 and a
don't know
half
what that
miles,
means. 17.
17 and a half miles, 68. Yeah.
Okay, and where do you guys start at the 113?
So we
Okay. 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 Awesome. Um, what you got anything, Brendan, before we try to get back on track a little bit, maybe? Well, just throw it out there. Throw it out there. Go ahead. Oh, you mean like some resistance? Yeah.
not really. We have a lot of young people and call anybody else out. But
Ha ha.
we have a few that are older than I am, but I think that can always be a challenge. But I think one of the things that's happened in the last, you know, 5-6 years here is you've seen, and this is not of my doing.
Yeah.
Our previous chief Derek was instrumental in of that kind of culture shift away from we're going to do it the best way we can come up to do it with, not just the way we've done it. And I
Right.
think that's been a big culture shift in our department. So, that's, I haven't seen a lot of pushback from that, but
Good.
it was a little bit of a concern, because I'm like, like it hasn't been, I'm not saying I don't want to make it sound like everything's sunshine and rainbows, but it's
Hey,
been
man.
actually a
I
really
mean,
positive experience.
uh,
Yeah, until it snows.
yeah. Um, yeah. All right, Adam. So, how old were you when you joined Brewston? Okay. All right. So when you first started out there, we kind of touched on that a little bit. How long were you before you kind of started to move up in the ranks a little bit before you thought, hey, man, I may try to go ahead and take a swing at this leadership?
Yeah, it was probably 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
You know,
Right. Right.
with some experience. But 5 years or so, I mean, they asked me to take over as a lieutenant, and so I did for a little while. Um, but I think that first fire I avoided fire department leadership stuff for a
Hmm.
really long time. I didn't want any parts of it. Didn't want to be in charge of anything. I just wanted to come
Adam's like, not my ass. Something
in. Yeah,
happened.
no,
They pointing at me.
but I did. It's rewarding in a different way. Uh, but
Right.
to anybody out there, if you're interested in doing the leadership thing, my office, it's worth it. Uh, hopefully you kind of,
Right.
got your finger on that point. It's not mastered anything, right? But
Yeah. You should at
you
least
have
know what the hell you're doing if you're going to tell other people what to do. Right.
but I was maybe
Okay.
not the week into that job. Man, I bet it was good snow on the ground, but I wore a bear track
Yeah.
and just constant. I remember I walked in the first fire, I had a couple guys make entry. We did kind of a transitional deal, and then they pushed up to the second floor, and I was wearing a mask because I wasn't actually supposed to be working as an officer yet. And I walked into the living room. First floor wasn't on fire. I walked into the living room. The TV was still playing. I'm like, yeah, shut that power off before somebody gets electrocuted upstairs. So but I was so nervous that first fire. I was more nervous on that fire than I've ever been fighting fire in my life because I was,
Yeah.
you weren't getting nobody, make any mistakes and whatever. And but it worked out, and and you know, so
Yeah, that's a new good saying. If a house catches on fire in the middle of the woods and no one's home, does the TV still make a sound?
the cable was still working in that house, and I was like, "Hey, idiot, you should probably go pull the power because that's not right." Like,
Yeah, you got it. That early morning house fire. One of your guys ever getting a good knock on it, and you're ever watching fucking Bob Barker on The Price is Right,
yeah,
and you're
right. Yeah, I'm
spinning the
watching The Price
wheel.
is Right in the living room in my air
Yeah,
pack. Yeah,
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 and you're like,
yeah,
somebody,
right, right.
somebody,
Go pull the meter, huh?
yeah, somebody pulled the
Yeah,
meter, right? And you walk in, and fucking Bob's sitting there waving at you.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So, you always you always make mistakes somewhere or other,
Yeah.
and just, but you learn from it. And I haven't forgotten to pull one since then, so at least there's that.
So, all right. So it was about 5 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
What, what kind of made you want to get into it? You said that you really tried to stay away from it for a while. What made you say, this is a time where I feel like I can give a little bit more to the department. Take that next step up and really, because I mean, I feel like that's a huge step, right? Because when you get
Mm-hmm.
off the truck, you per se, you have somebody that's that's gonna lead you in the right direction, right? This guy knows what he's doing. You're not really thinking for yourself in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're that guy, guys are looking at you like, what do you want to do? And you're like, fuck, I don't know. What do you guys want to do? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right.
Like you roll up and
Yeah,
yeah, these guys are like, nah, man, Adam's got this. Like, we're good. They're shitting their pants a little bit, and you're supposed to be the calm guy up there. And
yeah,
and that's a huge step to take on that kind of responsibility. So
yeah.
what kind of
It really is, and I think for me it was just there was a need, and
okay, yeah.
I just we had a need for somebody to step up. Okay, I guess we're doing this thing now.
Yeah.
I never went out into this
You kind of
wanting to
feel like you
be an
fell into
officer
it a
or
little bit maybe?
like it was a need, and I said, okay,
Yeah.
I'll see if I can do something.
Yeah, you're like, I
My
might be able to be that guy that might be able to
Yeah.
kind of help
Well,
out a little
and
bit. Yeah.
just like I don't know that I'm going to do any good at this, right? So
Yeah.
I'll do what I can do, and
And you're like,
hopefully,
"Can I be fired from this? Like, is that a possibility?" Like, yeah.
right. Only if they come in and see me watching cartoons in the living room while they're fighting fire upstairs in the fire.
Yeah.
Consistency. Uh,
Okay.
I didn't hold that role. He, yeah, indeed, and so he's been the assistant chief. I haven't. That's the only role I haven't held. It came through. Uh,
That's easy to say there, though, Brandon, because, like, I've seen some guys that were wearing leathers. Somebody should want to revoke that motherfucker. Same thing with the mustache guys. Like, we're all supposed to go, like I told you earlier, you got those rules whenever you shave that off in the mustache style. But, like, there's a couple guys that I was like, I don't know if I claim this guy, you know? Yeah.
yeah, honestly, I regret not buying one. 15 years ago, like 300 or 400.
Yeah.
But
$1,200 then. Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's $1,000 for the helmets. It's like I just don't know that I can. That's a lot of money. You know, 300 or 400 bucks. That's
Yeah.
then I'd be part of the cool kids club. Like
Yeah.
you know,
Good trade that euro in, huh? Trade that motherfucker
yeah,
in
man.
on
I
one.
want to like them. I really want to like them. I just can't do it. I just
No, I fully understand that, right? Press a button, fucking shield slides down, press it up,
yeah.
got it built in
Right.
light. The problem
Building
is, at the
lights,
end of the
building
day, with that
comms.
though,
Yeah.
it's very
Right.
hard to be out here getting pussy in a Euro helmet. It's just the way it is. Euro helmet, the easiness of it, or the other option. You know what I'm saying? I might have to stay away from the Euro. I don't know. Just walking birth control to me. All right, Brandon or Brandon. My God, see, you got me all flustered now. Start talking about getting crazy stuff. All right, Adam. Yes. So how long were you lieutenant before you moved up to captain? Or I don't know about your guys' ranks. Do you guys go like
Yeah.
first lieutenant, lieutenant, like, or how's it?
No, yeah. 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 In my day job. So training officer, which is our
Mhm.
like, he does a lot of the teaching stuff. We should have him teach. So I moved up to that. And
Okay.
it's been pretty, easy transition from because the leadership role, our captain primary job is training. So that was kind of a
Right.
because they can.
Right. No, I get that. Do you feel like so you finally got into like that lieutenant role, and you took that next step up the responsibility. Did you feel like it was a pretty smooth transition though from the lieutenant to the captain? I mean,
Yeah, that was we didn't have that was actually kind of
yeah,
anything I've been doing for a while, and so that's pretty easy transition. Yep.
dead, dude. He just number one, number one killer in the
Look
fire
what
service. Brennan just hit the ground.
right? Looks
Somebody,
like he fell right out of his chair.
fell right out of there. Brennan, I told, yeah, that's that Ruhr department stuff, is what that is. You don't get more roar than propping your phone up with a Coke can. uh, I don't know, man. We gotta find something
We don't all
sturdy.
have the sweet setups, the tech setups that you got over there.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Listen, I know. Yeah, I got a decent little setup here. It makes it a little bit easy, especially to run the podcast. So yeah, so Adam, so like that's one of the things. Like you said, it was a smooth transition up, and then once you probably hit that chief, you probably like that was kind of a different secret door there, right? You didn't really know what was behind that door, and then you kind of get in there, and you're like, they're like, surprise! Now you have to do all this.
Yeah, it's not, you know, job getting an apartment in a good place.
Uh-huh.
I get it's a lot of paper mail,
Yeah.
of work, but you don't think about it as a business, right? You're not paid for it. So, there's a lot of paperwork stuff and a lot of, it's managing, you're responsible, right? It's, hey, you're right?
Right.
And it's with you. And so, yeah, there's a lot to that, right? I think that hit me pretty hard early on. Was like, wow, there's a lot to this,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah. There's a lot of back stuff that you were like, it's a lot different than running out and playing firefighter, right? Like,
right,
you run out and you just put, like you said, the wet stuff and the hot stuff. But like, if you don't have that guy at the top that's responsible, you don't have a department to go to put the wet stuff and
right.
the hot stuff, right? I mean,
But
there's a lot of
there's a lot of challenges, but man,
absolutely,
but on the flip side though, this is the greatest job in the world for sure. And
yeah,
it's not easy, but if it were easy, it wouldn't be fun. And so, it is definitely this is the greatest job in the world. You get to, be with your folks and still do the job you enjoy. And
absolutely,
so,
yeah. No, I fully agree. Like I like I said, first coming into it, I mean, you think of like, the chief. Obviously he's making sure the place is running, but like you said, there's so much stuff that people don't think about, and just because it's a volunteer company doesn't mean that we show up one day out of the week to make sure under work detail to make sure that everything's good. I mean,
right.
some people can do that, of course. Some people can only show up when you know, when you get toned out. But when you're in that leadership role and you take on that responsibility, that's like a second job. You know.
Yeah, it really is. It's worth it, but it's a lot more, right? It's I find myself now thinking and talking about liability and
Hmm.
strategic planning and you know everything from truck replacement schedules to worrying about the roof and the parking lot and the what's our debt to income and all of that that you have to have in the back of your mind, like and then inevitably there's a wrench thrown in somewhere. Somebody, truck breaks. Or somebody will have to,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like I said, just because you're a volunteer company, like you said, you have to operate like you're a paid company. Just because you're not you're getting you basically are still doing the same job you're not getting paid for. If somebody doesn't, if you don't do your job, the bills don't get paid. You know, I mean, that's a huge I don't want to say like misconception, but some people think like, oh, like you guys are volunteer. It's like, yeah, still got to have the same
yeah,
training. Trucks
yeah. But the
still have
NFPA
to be.
regulations don't make any distinction,
Yeah, the
right? And the
NFPA
OSHA
doesn't
regulations
give a
don't make
shit
any
if it says
distinction,
paid or
right?
volunteer.
Right.
Yeah, that
And you
whatever
the
that paid truck
policies
has on
effective,
it,
and
that
yeah,
volunteer truck better have the exact same thing on it. And you better find
yep,
out a way to get it yourself. You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
another huge thing that people don't realize is the cost, right? And the cost is just rising and rising
mm,
and rising. And you go to some of these um bigger bigger departments, and I mean you see some of these departments buying new trucks every 5 years or so. We'll just say
yeah,
like yeah,
right.
Pierce came out with the new ladder truck. I'm gonna go ahead and trade this one off. But then you have some departments that are out here running 35-year-old trucks, hoping that it doesn't break. Hoping that praying that it doesn't break down because yeah, yeah, he
It's our
flipped it on it.
1996 right there beside me. So you know, yep,
Right. So, it's the same job, but maybe not always the exact same tools that you're kind of, fighting the fire with, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think
And you
that
want to
it's
make sure that you got to
yeah,
make sure that your equipment's working, and that
right.
the folks that are under you like have everything they need to do that job, right? And that's the you know, that's the you got to make sure that they have the right gear and they have the
Mhm.
right equipment, and that the trucks are running. Like, not that I do all of that personally necessarily,
Right, but
but
it's
at
your
the end of the day, right?
responsibility though as being at the top to kind of delegate that and make sure that it
Right.
is getting done still, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like just because you're the chief doesn't mean that that nobody else doesn't have responsibility, and at the end of the day you're the guy that's got to do everything, right? But you're the guy
No,
that's got to
absolutely.
say, "Hey,
And
listen,
I'm
like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You know, what the hell's going on?"
well,
Like,
and I have, I'm lucky, right? I'm exceedingly fortunate here. I've got great officers, I got great firemen.
mhm.
I don't like I said, I went to the town for 2 weeks. And I knew those guys were going to get just hammered as soon as I crossed the county line, I had a big blast. But I mean, but never a doubt, man. They were going to go. They had a couple of fires. They had a receiver extra. Yeah, some kind of receiver extrication, right? It's in the middle of
Cool.
that. And, never in doubt. They're good to go. And I'm lucky, because I've got great guys, great line officers. The men and women here are awesome. So I'm really fortunate, but it's still, that's the stuff that I think worries you the most is like, hey, we've done enough to get everybody what they need to do their job. Have everybody in the right gear. Our plans and our guidelines, our policies, are they set up? Are we setting this up for success, or are we setting them up to, you know, fail or get hurt or something like that, right? Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a big change in mindset, but I was ready. Like I was,
Yeah, like you said, you came out with a little bit of experience, right? You kind of just weren't
yeah,
like
and I was,
you just didn't
I was
finish fire
30,
one, and they
right?
said,
Like I
"Hey,
wasn't
bud,
right.
you're
Here you
running next
go,
fucking fire," right?
tag, right? It is, but I don't think I think going to chief is a big step no matter where you come from. Right? I don't think there's any like, cause it's all of that that comes on you. I don't think it matters where you come from to do it. the biggest jump for me was going to the light officer role to begin with, and after that, it wasn't it was a lot, right? But that as it is, but and that like I said, it's fantastic, man. I wouldn't trade it. It's awesome, but it's a definitely more
Right. So
play
to
the
so to add to the career a little bit, so paramedic, correct?
Mhm,
Okay. So obviously you got into the fire service, you're like, man, I
mhm.
like this. So what made you want to get into the medical side of it? Like you just felt that I knew that you said you don't feel like you don't like to feel like helpless, like like you
Mhm.
can't do anything. So is that kind of what you feel like gravitated you into there?
Well, so when I was really young, 17, 18, whatever, like man, like I was like a lot of young guys out there, full testosterone, love fighting fire,
Yeah.
door kicker 101, right, and dragging hose in and doing the whole thing, and as I got a couple of years into it, I really liked the rescue side. It started to play with my brain, and I'm like, man, I really like kind of working these puzzles out. And somebody's like, hey, you should come over to try looking at that thing. And I did. I really like it because of that. It's the same part of my brain I think that likes rescue. Right? It's the
Yeah.
the technical diagnostic stuff, and then part of that was it was a lot easier to make a career out of. There just weren't that many paid fire departments, and I could get a job on an ambulance and be around that stuff all the time, but didn't have to, you know,
So
city
you still
wheeling
pay
back in
your
those
bills,
days,
but then still kind of get to play a little bit, right? Like you were still
yeah,
involved in it.
right. And back in those days, like like the city wheeling, like they'd hire two guys every 3 years, and you're like, okay, yeah, because and it's like, or I could, could get a job working on an ambulance, a lot easier than
Absolutely.
I could on a fire truck. So yeah, that was the way, but I've always enjoyed it too, man. I've always loved being that. I love the technical aspect of that. I became an EMT in like 2004, and like immediately as soon as I started working, I knew I was going to be like it was like
So
within a month. I was like,
EMT
yeah,
first,
I
and
gotta go do.
then so EMT, and then you moved up to the paramedic. That was even probably a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
jump too, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's the same type thing, right? It's a jump in it, and you know, so I was an EMT. I think it became 2004, became an EMT.
hmm
Finished my medic in '06.
Okay.
Got out. Was working in Marshall County. And, did some ride time. Some orientation time with one of the senior guys on the trainer. And then they turned me loose. And the first day as a paramedic, I was the only paramedic in the whole county. And like
Shit.
talk about a rough shift, right? Like you can sleep. We worked 24s. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sit down. I'm like, man, like like it's like like if you call 911 in Marshall County, you got me. And I'm like that. I feel like we need somebody better than me for that.
Right, right. Like
You know, like
it goes back to that Joe Dirt thing where you're like, I'm new, I don't know what to do. Like
right,
Adam's over here, like fresh
right,
EMT. Adam's like, man, I'm about to go out and save the world, right? I'm because like
right.
you
In my
know that
head,
you have that person that's there to back you up, your partner. But like you said, you were that guy that night that if something
right,
happened,
right,
they were like, Adam, what do you want us to do? And he's like, I don't fucking
right.
know.
I don't know. Like
He's like, I got a
call
bunch of
911.
different things written down in a piece of paper. We're gonna put it in this hat. We're gonna pull one of them out, and we're gonna try that first. Like,
Yeah, right. And that's I think I don't remember. I think it was Brad was my partner that day at first shift, and he was looking at me. He's like, "No, you got this, man." And I'm like, "But you got that much confidence in me?" He's
yeah,
like, "I don't know
yeah.
if I got this or not, but
You're
we'll
like,
make
bro.
it
I
work."
walked in, and they told me that I was the only one here. I thought about going home. Like I
Mm-hmm.
thought about taking a sick day the first day.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you either
Yeah.
get that, and so we'll get into that, right? Because from going off of that, that's still on the same side of the fire side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is you get these guys that you know you get your fire one, and this is even a thing that you look at probably differently as a chief now, because you think you're like, this guy went through this training, and we all know how that goes. You could sit there and you could read something in a book 500 times, But when you got to do that shit in person, it's different, right? It's totally different.
Hmm.
And I like to consider that, like, what I see the fire, I'm like, got to put the fire out, right? But you got to
Hmm.
be like aggressive, but I'm trying to think of like how I want to, like, I don't want to say like strategically aggressive, but you got to have like a little bit of intelligently
Hmm.
aggressive, right? There's a word for it. That's kind of was
Hmm.
downsing around that, but yeah, because you're like, the only way you're really gonna put the fire out, right? You got to get the water on it. You can sit there and spray it at
Yeah.
the wall from the next room over, but at that point, like, it's about burning itself out. You got to put the water
Right.
on the fire.
Right.
But then you get some of these allegedly, you get some of these departments that they get guys and they just say, "Go put the fire out, boys." Go put it
Mhm.
out, and they're hanging out back by the truck, and and shit's just like a circus going on inside of this house, right? And like
Yeah.
you as a chief, I'm sure you even think, you're like, listen, this guy's new, you know, even though he's went through this training, we still have to like make sure that he's aware that, like, things happen, right? When you go inside
Hmm.
of the house, this isn't a burn building. That's a steel structure
Right.
that's filled with,
Yep.
artificial smoke or real smoke, right? The roof's not going to fall
Right.
in on you. The floor's not going to fall
Right.
in on you. You
Yeah.
see the fire,
We
you get that tunnel vision. And
yeah, you try to get, for us, I always try to get first couple fires, I don't want a young guy in there without one of my experienced guys,
right, right,
whether it's me or one of the other officers, one of the senior guys, I want them to be, ideally on the nozzle so
yeah,
that they can have that tunnel vision of fighting the fire, but they got somebody behind them that's doing this, you know, and doing this on the floor, so that they're not going to get themselves in a bad position. And you let them you take that nozzle and you go, let them push to make that firefight, let them have all that tunnel vision and get that adrenaline out of the system. But you got to have a senior guy, somebody with some experience behind them going, it's not like,
yeah,
hey, this is over our head right now, or I don't like the way this room looks, or because they know, you don't you taste a few fires or a dozen fires before you really know what it's supposed to feel like. You don't know if it's what you don't know how hot is too hot until you've been in,
right, yeah, yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah.
in
That
fires,
first fire,
and there's no way to teach somebody that, right?
right.
Like, yeah, it's hot,
Something's not
in that
feeling
first
right,
fire,
right? Like,
you're
because
like,
when you're
man,
in
it's hot
there,
in there, and
like,
you're like, nah, it's still good.
right, that first fire, you're like, man, there's fucking smoke. Like, it all
Right,
looks like smoke. You know what I mean? Like, you're not
right,
even, yeah, like,
that's
you're
right,
not paying attention to what kind of smoke it is, what the color is, or nothing. You see bright, you see orange shit. You're like, I gotta put it out. I gotta put it out.
right, right. And so you
So,
need somebody that's got a couple of years that can
right,
put that
that's like,
adrenaline to
hey,
the
kid,
side
like,
and say, hey, we got to see the whole room, and you can't expect somebody on their first fire to do that. They're just not
right,
going to,
because the fire's 50 feet in front of them, and they also don't understand that there is 50 feet, that they have to travel in between that front door and where the fire is. And there's a lot of challenges in between that. That's just not a straight walking down the, hallway. You got to consider that.
Well, that's exactly right, right, and they're not all. It's just,
I think we lost them. So, right. So while we're waiting for him, right, Brandon? So we've talked about that before. Like, I'm sure. Like I said, I don't, I'm not a salty guy. I don't claim to be. I don't claim to have the gear that's got 15 burn holes through it, because I was in world in some kind of war years where we're fighting fire, 16 fires in one night, right? So I don't claim that. I don't claim to have a resume. I don't claim to have a resume that the FDNY is going to call me on my personal cell phone and say, hey man, we're not sure what's going on with this house fire. Can you give us a play by play and how we can put it out? I don't claim that, but you know I I've it's not my first
Hey, you guys
rodeo.
still there?
Yeah, well, hey, yeah, man, yep.
Hey, I'm back. Oh, sorry. I don't know what happened. Let me get
Hey,
my.
man, you're good. It's okay. We were kind of just chatting a little bit to fill it in. Um,
There we
right.
go.
So, kind of what we're talking about though is like, we've all had that first fire experience, and you go in, and like I was saying, you just have one, you know, focus on your mind, and it's putting that fire out. So, like you said, you got to have a guy that knows what they're doing that's going to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you know, it's time to get the fuck out of here." This
Right.
time right now is not the time to put the fire out. We need to get back up, and we need to, we need to take another approach at this because, right,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You'll be all right. You're
yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, but it takes that experience, right? Because you're
Right.
shitting yourself. It's either you're shitting yourself or you're not worried at all, which both of those are kind of dangerous. You kind of got to have that mellow, right? And that's what that experience guy is there for. Right, you got to
Right.
have that guy that's like, something's not right because when you first go inside of this house, you have bulky ass boots on, you're wearing a
Right.
mask that it looks like you're trying to make a damn kaleidoscope out of a paper towel roll, and you're trying to look through it, right? There's smoke
Yeah.
everywhere, it's hot. um you're not really sure what the floor is supposed to feel like when you're sounding the floor. You're not sure that that the ceiling doesn't look right. But that experienced guy is like, yo, this whole fucking, this whole ceiling's about to fall in on us. You don't know.
Yeah.
You're looking at the fire. You're not sure. Like, you're not looking at the signs, and you're not able to really recognize, like, hey, like, it's getting pretty bad in here. We need to get out.
Well,
So,
and you see that too, where you get the experienced guys. You know,
mhm,
hoarder house is another big one. You get a young guy in there; he'll crawl all over kinds of stuff to get in
yeah,
the back room of some hoarder house, and you get that experienced guy go, no, 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 there, Sparky. No, we're
yeah,
not doing that because we'll never get the heck back out of here. And
right.
sometimes it takes that, right? And you need that experience. And I mean, you guys have been in fires.
Hmm.
There's sounds that you expect, and things that like you said, ammunition going off. Yeah, it'll startle you, but you're like, okay, I know what that was. And you hear the crackling and the popping, and you hear the all that, and there's sounds to expect. And then you start hearing some creaking or something. You're like, those aren't good sounds. That's not normal, right? Like something's changing. And and you only get some of that with experience. I'm glad that they're sending. When I went through Fire One, we didn't have a burn building to go through. We didn't do any live burn stuff.
They're like,
We
here's a
kind of,
picture of what it looks like with the house on
right.
fire. They're like, the next
They
time
can,
you see a house on fire, you're going the fucking side, and you're like,
yeah, right. And they like
okay.
smoked up, they did some like, theatrical smoke stuff with us and stuff. But like, I'm glad that we're doing some burn building things and some flashover training with the young guys now. That's a huge benefit. I wish I'd have had. But, you know, so when we went in, it was like, well, we didn't
Man,
know,
Adam, you're
I didn't
talking like
know.
an old guy now. You're talking like a
Yeah.
guy like they took like a sleep mask, put it over your eyes. Somebody took a rag and put it over your nose, and you had
Yeah.
8 guys in the firehouse blow Cuban cigars in your face, and was like, "Here,
Right.
walk on
That's how
this
it was done, man.
tightrope
That's how it was done
to
back
the
in the
end of the
days.
garage." Like,
That was how it was done back in the day.
right? But isn't it crazy to see that the fire service like evolve? Right? Like you had
Yeah.
guys back, like um, not even that long ago that
Mhm.
thermals weren't a thing, right? I mean, like I feel like
Right.
what right, or you couldn't fucking afford it, right? When
Or you
some of
couldn't
this
afford
stuff,
it. Right.
yeah, this stuff comes out, like it's got this fucking ridiculous price tag that you have some departments that have more money than God, that,
Hmm.
and then you have some departments that are out here doing a hot dog sale to pay the fucking power bill so the power don't
Hmm.
get shut off, and or making sure that they have gas to run that fire alarm, that's some kid fucking left his food in the oven, and
Been in Morgantown too long, have you?
yeah. Yeah, so about that, but right.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
No, it's really business as usual. We got a good relationship with our mutual aid partners in Fayette County. We have Marcusburg and Farmington that we run with most often in Fayette County and Friendsville and in Garrett
Yeah,
County,
yeah.
Maryland.
Actually, I took
And
my Fire One with a kid from Friendsville.
yeah, and we did. We have a good relationship with those guys up there, and the help comes both ways. I think. And but no, it's pretty much business as usual. Communications are always a struggle, because but we're on
Yeah,
different, yeah, and right, exactly. But we're on totally different radio systems, and so that's all. We finally have a radio now that operates on their digital system because it's totally different than
because
ours, and
that
we're still
communication
operating
is
mostly in
obviously like
VHF.
life or death, right?
Yeah,
That
absolutely,
could be
right,
life or
and
death. So I was,
yeah,
I always, for whatever reason, well, being a firefighter, my Facebook feed's about 90% fire stuff, right? And so there was an article
I
that
think
popped up. Yeah, I feel like everybody's. And it
yeah,
was an
everybody's that way. I
article,
think.
and it was a fire marshal's review on a fatality fire. And what it was an apartment building, and you had it was a 4-man engine company. You had your engineer, he's going securing a hydrant. You had one guy that was told pull a ladder off the truck, go set a ladder up, second story window. There's a report, entrapment inside. Uh, the captain and the other massman made a push. What actually wound up happening was one of the officers assisted the other firefighter in actually getting the victim out of the window, right?
Hmm.
uh, the captain and the other firefighter had no clue that the victim was out of the house because it was broadcasted over a police frequency. So you had
Right,
two men that were inside with heavy fire condition, heavy smoke condition, doing a
thinking they're
primary
risking a lot,
search.
saving a lot, right?
Primary
Yeah,
search, right? Like
right,
literally giving
yeah,
it all, and could have could have backed out, but that lack of communication.
yeah.
It was actually wound up being a fatality fire. One of the firefighters actually did not make it out, and like you look back at it and you're like, this could have been totally avoided because of
Right.
the miscommunication. Like that's good.
Communication's a huge problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about how many fires
Yeah.
you guys have been around the block, and I've been. I don't want to say I've been around the block. I've taken a few steps. Yeah, I've taken a few steps down the block, but I haven't been around it.
Yeah. We got one. Yeah.
You guys got one. Okay, you guys got to go to other blocks to actually consider walking around a block.
That's right.
Yeah. So right, because how many times have you been on a fire ground and you can't even get a small little bit of information out? There's something so simple because everybody thinks that they have to talk on the radio. And that like you said, that mayday, like that we're all taught, mayday, mayday, mayday. If you're lucky to get one out, if you're in that bad of a situation, like
Mm.
what's on paper and what you can actually accomplish is totally different there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge
100%.
thing.
And
I've been on
I
fire
think that's
before. Guys are standing right fucking next to each other. They can see each other. They could probably sign to each other. That's how close they are, and they're talking on the radio. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is
yeah.
going on here? Like,
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's one of those. I don't know if you guys know the statistics on like RIT teams. You know
right.
how many people, and how long it takes somebody to get somebody out of an average residential fire.
Oh, yeah, a good bit of time. I assume probably 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Is it?
I think it's over 20 minutes, and it typically requires more than 15 people.
Which is
And
insane, right? If you think about that,
right,
when you're on the fire
right,
ground, you're thinking, if Brandon goes down, I'm about to run in the fucking other room and I'm about to get him out. But that's not always. I don't know, Brandon. I'm just using it for example. I'm not gonna. Adam's the guest.
yeah,
He's a guest on the show. I'm not gonna put it that kind of bad. sinister stuff on them. So
Right. But yeah, it's a scary thing. And the best laid plans that you put on paper are 3 a.m. on that fire. They might work and they might not work. And you've got to
right,
have
and those are
you've got to
best
have
conditioned,
officers that can
right?
think on your feet, right? And
Yeah,
formulate a plan based on what they have, what resources they have, what they have going on right now. And you just have to have
absolutely.
good people out there that are going to make that decision in the moment, because I could lay out all kinds of plans on paper and here's what we're going to do and here's how it's going to work, and all that's going to go out the window, because there's no way for you to plan for every fire, every
Right,
situation. Maybe throwing a ladder to the second story window is the right decision, and maybe it's not. And you can't make that decision until you're there and some of that
right.
stuff. Not that you shouldn't have any plans or procedures, but you know,
Those
you
kind of get
can't plan
thrown
for
out.
everything.
Yeah, those get thrown out like sometimes when you're like, this just is not gonna. Like I said, that whole on paper and then like in
Yeah.
situation is just. But
Right.
right, well that's true. No, that's
Not enough, I can tell you that.
yeah, and we're all guilty of that. That's the thing is
Right.
we're all guilty because in the back of your head you're like we're smart guys. We know what we're doing. If something's gonna go wrong, we're gonna notice or something. But it's that bullshit where, like I said, you walk in low visibility. You're not watching Chicago Fire. Not that I have a problem with Chicago Fire. Actually, I like Chicago Fire. But you're not walking in and it's not a clear view, and I don't see the victim over here on the couch that's sitting here watching Bob Barker. Like I said,
Right.
somebody forgot
Right.
to pull the meter. Um, and uh,
Hey, you're
but right, but then you didn't see that the floor is extremely weak, right? You walk in and you fall through, and and you brought up the RIT team, right? I think it's awesome. I think the RIT teams are. I think the only thing that we run into is you get that 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning structure fire. Guys look at it and say, "Well, I could be at work an hour and a half. I ain't gonna go." And it takes you calling out your fifth, sixth due to get 7 guys for a
mm,
structure fire, right? So I mean, that RIT team is awesome. I mean, what you're two
it's
guys
a great
minimum.
idea.
It
Yeah.
is. It is an awesome. It
It's a
really
great
is.
idea. But it comes up against the practicality of it, we just don't have that many
Right,
guys
you
at two
brought
in
up
the
like
afternoon.
FDNY earlier, right? These
Yeah.
guys will put 30 fucking guys in a closet. You
Right.
know, they will. I
Right.
mean, they just
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they'll literally drop the whole. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point they could all jump on top of the fire and smother it. They
Yeah.
don't even have to use
Right.
water, right? But then you have guys out
And the
here,
response times are 4 minutes, 5 minutes, right? Like,
right? They're
they've
sometimes
got an
getting a
engine crew
fire
there.
in an early stage.
Right. And
You
we
know,
never get that, right? That's,
right? Yeah. I mean, thankfully, if we get a fire down, Westover's not huge. Luckily, our area is kind of, but I mean, even in like I said, we have 9 miles out of rural,
Mhm.
road. By the time we get out there, those conditions they're pretty rough. They're way different. That's um. So I don't know. It's a really rough situation that we're put into sometimes because sometimes you're in a lose-lose situation.
Mhm. Well,
You're
you are,
you're
right?
you're
And
stacked against you before you even get out of bed.
NFPA says you need 15 guys to
Yeah.
effectively operate in an interior structural firefighting environment, right?
And I'm sure you've been
Well,
on fires before where you were lucky to have 5 guys, you
oh,
know?
and like, we don't 15 guys, and what are you going to do with that? And that's great. Like, I hope, and I'm sure they're right. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they are, right? But if I waited to have 15 people on a fire scene, I might as well just set up the deck gun and wait,
Yep.
because
Hit
we're
her
never
hard
going
from
to
the
do,
yard, huh?
yeah, we're never going to get any interior firefighting done. And
Yep.
right. We save a lot of chimneys and foundations around here. But you can't, you have to make intelligent risk decisions, I think. But you can't just say, well, we're not going to do any interior firefighting. And you can't say we're going to go in on every fire either. It's all situational. And if you catch one of those that you have the right guys and the right, chance to make do some good, then you can't stand outside of them, and be like,
Right. You
well,
gotta
we
you
don't
gotta
have
weigh that
our
risk versus reward, right?
exactly.
Abandoned house has been abandoned for the last 20 years. I did at one, I was responding to a call one day, and we had a guy. He was a little newer in our department, and he's like, "Well, it's an abandoned house. There's probably nobody inside." And I was like, "Well, you don't know that, right? I mean,
Right,
it's not abandoned until it's searched, right? I mean,
right,
obviously, you roll up and it's fully involved. I'm not gonna like try to do a primary search. I'm not gonna sit here and try to put a fire suit on and run right through a fully involved house. Say, yeah, no, nobody in here, right? You got to use your mind on
yeah.
that. But I think um, people really don't use um, I think that some departments are just so used to being like,
And honestly, this is one thing that has changed. I don't know that it's changed for me, but I get the counter argument more than I ever have in the past. I'm a we kick the door in and we fight fire from the inside kind of guy. I've always been
yeah,
that
you
way.
can't
That's
put the
that's
fire
that's how I
out
grew
from
up
the
in the
yard,
fires.
right?
Right. That's how I grew up in the fire service. We're interior firefighters. It's what we do. Um, but sitting where I sit now, there's a really strong argument to be made that we shouldn't be doing as much interior firefighting because we don't have enough people, and it is a risk, right? And I'm not willing to go that far to say we're only going to be an exterior fire department. We can't do that, right? To
Right,
me, I can't do that. But I get the argument because that is, from a leadership standpoint, that's the safest way to be,
right. But
and
that's a
and
big like
NFPA would support you. NFPA would support you in that.
right.
OSHA would support you in that, right? And there's good data out there that you increase your risk by not having 15 guys and all that. But
Absolutely.
that's a bridge too far for me, right? It's got to be situational. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
because
so.
like
I think you're right.
yeah,
I think you're
I
right. But I
agree.
think you have to be, you know, like all things limited staffing wise, you have to be smart. You have to pick your spot, and you have to do that risk analysis and pick your spots and when you can do that and when you can't do that. I think we
I
lost a
think we
cat.
lost him. Think you guys are you guys are trading spots there. Right. So I mean, I am I don't think that I ever we roll up and I'm like, all right, yep, we're you know, I'm sorry, I feel bad for this family. We're gonna go ahead and hit it with the debt gun, right? That shouldn't be your first
Hmm.
answer. Kind of look at it. You want to do a 360, obviously. You want to kind of get a
Hmm.
good look at the full picture. I think a lot of departments that I've seen don't really take VES or VEIS now. Just because one side of the house is on fire, I ran into that situation before where people look at it and it's been vented through the front windows,
Yeah, it
and
looks
she's
pretty bad
rolling
on the
pretty.
alpha
She's
side, but the
looking
but the Charlie
really
side's not so
bad
bad.
alpha side,
Right,
right? You go around to
right.
Charlie's side, and you can't even tell there's a damn house fire, right?
They're grilling
There's a
hot dogs on
victim
the
down,
back deck. They don't even know the alpha
right?
side's on fire. Right,
Right. But then you have some
right.
of those departments that are just write somebody off right there. They're like, all right, yep, we're going to be in defensive. Well, that person
Hmm.
inside, is. I think that you have to look at it, and this comes with experience, is that if it's hard for you to survive, you have to look at the condition to see if there's survivable condition, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I think that a lot of departments are just like, well, yeah, that just doesn't really look safe. I don't know if I just really want to do that. I think that sometimes you gotta risk a little bit, right? You got to
Yeah.
risk a little bit to get a little
Yeah.
bit. If you don't do no risk at all, you might as well just left the trucks parked in the garage. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not
The
saying
fire
that you're going to roll up
services.
on a 3-story apartment building that's fully involved, and you're like, all right, boys, we can do a primary search. It's not going to really happen. But
Right. But you do have to do that risk benefit, right? And
you do, you
you
do.
have to look at your conditions. You have to understand your building construction, right?
Hmm.
If you've got that big fire on the A side in a balloon frame structure, you might be able to get 1 or 2 rooms in the back, but you're not going to do a lot with that because it's going to move too fast on you. And so you do have to kind of understand that, and you have to pick your spots. But I think that's one of the difficulties I think in rural firefighting and in small staffing departments like mine and a lot of folks out there is that you have to, there is no one right game plan. You have to be able to say, okay, and for our guys here, my job is way more often pulling on the reins, like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, no, no,
Yeah,
no. Y'all, because they'll run through the fire. They don't care. These guys
yeah,
are aggressive and
yeah.
I love them for it, but they'll run through that fire and get in that house that they ought not be in. Because they want that. And so more often than not, I'm one that's like, this isn't good.
Right.
We're not. This is not a good environment. We're not going to be, and we're not. We can maybe search this one room or something, but this is not a fire we can make an interior attack on.
Right. So, one thing I wanted to hit on earlier, uh, is so
Welcome
we were
back,
talking
Cat.
about, yeah. What happened? Phone die? Hey. So what we're getting back to was, so you were talking about having that experienced guy, right? With your newer guy. I mean, you got to have a guy that's teaching. I think one thing that I see sometimes is, um guys don't not wanting to teach. Guys wanting to, everybody knows, the guy that's just hogging the nozzle. I Well, right, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll just assume that the guy knows what he's doing, right? But this young guy's not going to learn anything by sitting there watching. Like Adam said, like you get a fresh guy, you want him on the nozzle. You want him to be
Mm-hmm.
able to get that
Mm-hmm.
feel, to know what he's doing. So maybe eventually he'll be that guy that's gonna, you know, to be the guy that's backing the fresh firefighter up. I mean, you gotta. I we got to teach each other. If we just keep all the knowledge that we have and just shut down and just say, well, that's for me to know and you free to find out later on, then I mean, we're kind of screwing ourselves.
Yeah, that
Uh,
mindset never made any sense to me, right? And I don't,
it
I,
didn't, right? Well,
I,
you'll learn that,
I,
and it's like, well, why do I have to learn that later on? Why are you?
yeah,
Uh, and I've been a guy before where I'm like, here, take the hand line. Take the headline. You've never been on it. You just a little bit of experience, and eventually, I think it's hard enough to get people to volunteer. Right? We've talked about that, and it's even harder when you have guys that's did it 1,000 times, and you've got guys that haven't really got to do it, and then these guys are like, "Well, I don't even feel like I'm doing anything." You know?
yeah. Yeah, and for a lot of departments and us sometimes too, you don't get enough fires. I mean, we have more fires
Right?
than we'd
Yep.
like to
Yep.
have, right? But
Yep.
then on the flip side, that's part of what keeps folks interested, right? Is
Yep.
actually getting to fight a fire, or getting to cut on a car. Not that you wish for those things to happen, right?
Yeah.
And you want your new guys to have that experience, so because someday I won't be there, right? And they need to be the guy that knows what's going on. They need to, and the only way you're gonna train them up is to put them in, put them on some calls and
Yeah,
get
you
them in
got to
some
kind of put
fires
your
and
own ego aside there and say, "Hey, listen, like this guy. I mean, you never know when this guy that you're training is a guy that's going to show up to your own house fire. There's
that's
going
right.
to be the guy that's
And
going to come in inside and save you. Or you're a car wreck, and if you've never taught this guy, because I've seen departments like this that they rely on that one guy that's that guy, and if that guy does
mhm.
not show up, they're all looking at each other like this is fucked.
Now
You
what?
know,
Right? Yeah.
like
Now what?
like
Yeah.
they're all peeking out the bay door, like this motherfucker's showing up because like he's always here, but the time that he doesn't, I mean, you can't function in the department with like, just having that one guy.
Mhm.
Everybody has to be that guy. I mean, r-
Mhm.
that's true. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
yeah, we heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's
No, I
hard.
I agree.
Yeah, our firefighters historically, as firefighters, we don't do a great job of mentoring. And we all need to be better at that. Me
Uh,
included, in every department I've ever been in. We could always have better mentors, whether it's on the fire ground or around the station, or in the office. We could all be better mentors. And I'm trying. But it's historically we don't we don't get that. Hmm. It's good, right? Yeah, yeah. So that was a safer grant that we did, and we got some help with recruitment retention. It pays for initial training. It pays for their initial outfitting for gear, and then as well as doing some marketing stuff and creating a marketing plan and kind of rebranding, tweaking some logos and doing some of that kind of stuff that honestly we would not have spent the money on as a department if it were coming out of, we wouldn't have had that to spend. It's important dollars to spend. I don't want to say that's wasted, right? But it's not, when I look at operational concerns and marketing, like operational concerns win all the time, right? And twice on Sunday. Yeah, right. Right. But that safer grant, it's a 4-year project. Yeah, it's a 4-year project, and it's going pretty well. Would definitely recommend anybody out there, if you're interested in doing safer, it's worth it. And you can, that money. It said it's a 4-year project, so you have to plan it out a little bit. It's not like an AFG grant for new air packs or something. It's like, here's my quote. I'm gonna type up my narrative and send it out. You need a 4-year budget, and it's a little more, onerous as far as that stuff concerned. You have to do, reporting throughout as you spend that money, and you
Right.
know, but it's been worth it so far for us. It has helped our recruiting some, and given us a shiny new logo and a sign, and some of that. And
Okay.
but anything we can do, right? Anything we can do to get more help, and that's and that's one, I guess, one of the messages too that we're trying to get out. I'm sure it's not just us, right? Is that I don't, this is, I think, the most common misconception I see in the recruiting realm is like, well, I don't just need firemen. Yeah, I love firemen. I am one, right? I'm a hose driver
Right.
from the way back, but but I need, we can use financial folks. We can use people that can cook. We can use people that
You
can,
just want to help, right?
yeah, just want to help. If you've got talents, if you've got, any talent, we can use it here, whether it's, cooking or doing the books or sweeping the floor or whatever it is, right? We can use you because
Right.
that's,
You ain't
and,
got to
and
you
it's
ain't got
not
to
just
put
me
gear
and
on and fight the
Bruceton,
fire.
right? It's not just me and Bruceton, right? I think would be, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a fire chief in West Virginia that says, nah, I don't need nobody
Yeah.
else. you
No,
know,
I fully agree. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the backside that we on top of worried about responding to these calls you got to worry about. And then if you had that person to pick up some of that slack, that'd make a huge difference. So
yeah,
one thing you're talking about is like taking care of your newer people. I think that's probably one of the most crucial people because your people that's been around. You're gonna have bickering at a firehouse. You're gonna have that. People are gonna get their feelings hurt. You're gonna have those screaming matches. That shit's gonna happen. Whatever. You understand that's part of it. Tempers flare, right? But like these new people that are coming in, that's a scary thing, right? You're not really sure what people are gonna expect out of you. But like from what I've seen, and this isn't like pointed at any department specifically, just that I've just noted this happening, right? You're a new guy, you're getting some old ass gear, you're getting the shit, some of the shittiest stuff, because we're just gonna assume that you're worthless right from the start until you prove yourself. Well, I feel like sometimes you can't do that, right? You got to give everybody a
Yeah.
fair shot. You got to assume
Well,
that this guy could be the best guy in the department with a
yeah.
little bit of, mentor and a little bit of training and stuff. So you got to take
And
care of your
I
new
think the
people.
practical concerns of that come in too, right? So, if you come in, join Brewston tomorrow,
Hmm.
no, I don't have brand new gear for you. I'm going to
Right.
order it, but I don't know what it is right this second, but earlier this year it was a 12-month turnaround.
I was gonna say sometimes,
So,
yeah, I've heard some people wait
I,
what
I
two
only
two
have
years,
what I
3 years
have,
sometimes.
and I
Right.
only have what I have right now. And I'm going to get you in gear, and it's going to be safe gear. But I only have what I have, and I'll order you new, but it might
Yeah.
be 12 months or 18 months before we can see that new gear. And, that's just that's just the nature of it. And I don't have the budget to have 20 sets in every size sitting around, just
Right.
waiting on somebody to fill them. And so we. Mhm.
Right. Right. And I fully, yeah, I agree with that. I do. Right. Right. No, I understand that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that yeah, and that's and that actually brings up an interesting conversation about incentives in the fire service and volunteer fire service. What incentives do you offer for your folks to keep them, you know, motivated and enjoying the job, right? Other than just the feel good, the warm fuzzy feeling you get when you get home
Right.
at
Like
night.
you did a good job.
Do
Let
you
me put a
have
gold
any?
star on your
Yeah, like
locker.
do you have any? Because obviously we're not giving financial incentives here. So,
Right.
do you have any?
Well, you mean I'm
Well,
not
you
getting
can
paid
have
for
double
this?
my salary. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And yeah, all new recruits get double what I get paid. How about that?
Yeah.
And and so so you have to come up with ways to incentivize folks to take do something new, right? So like, one just small example for us, like if you do a rescue tech class, we'll buy you a rescue helmet, right? So if
Yeah,
you get
that's awesome.
certified as a tech, we'll buy you a Team Wendy rescue helmet to use, as a, and so you can tell who the rescue techs are because they're the only ones with our little orange helmets,
That's yeah,
but they're
that's
way more
awesome.
comfortable than your lid, right? To wear out on the
Right.
road. Yep.
So
So
well, there's
this,
another flip side of that there, right? Is taking the trainings, but then you also have some people that'll take 105 trainings and literally use none of them, right?
there's an old
Right.
saying that says, what if we train our people and they leave? And the counter to that is, what if they don't? What if we don't train them and they stay?
That's true. That's
So
really
I'd
true.
rather pay for the training, and if they
Right,
go
right,
and
right.
decide to take that and run in Westover, then you guys get that
Right.
benefit, and hopefully I get steal one of your guys away later. But I'd
Right.
much rather them take the training and pay for the training than them not take the training, because if they don't take it, then then we're stuck with guys that don't know what's going on.
Right.
Right?
No, I understand that for sure.
Yeah. Mhm. Right. And you can't take it personally when things change and people, you see this trend of, they get real hot and heavy, 16, 17, 18, whatever. Then they get a girlfriend, you don't see quite as much of them, but they're still around, and then, but if you get married and have kids, you won't see them for a while, right? Because they're busy in life and whatever. And then, you might, they might come back. You see them again at 40 or 45. Kids get older, and see guys come back around. But
Right.
There's a natural ebb and flow to that, and you can't take it personally from a leadership standpoint. When somebody's like, "Yeah, hey man, like I can't do this anymore, or I'm just too busy, or my heart's not in it, or whatever it is," right? And you just say, "Okay, that's just part of it."
Right.
Oh, we've been together 7 years. Yeah, we've been together
Okay.
7 years, and so we just we've been married about a week. So but Katie's
Dang. Okay.
fantastic, right? So I was already a firefighter, I was already a paramedic when we met. So
What took you so long to get married then? I'm sure you heard that.
right?
When you gonna
Yeah, oh
pop the
yeah, yeah,
question?
all the time,
When are you
all the
gonna get
time,
me a ring?
all the
Yeah.
time.
So
Yep,
yeah, so
all
me and
the
my
time.
wife
Not
will
not from her so much. It was from everybody else. But
really. Yeah.
no. So Katie's fantastic. So she's only known me as a firefighter. So she,
Okay.
kind of very quickly, kind of understood what to expect from that. And like, yep, there are times that I'm not going to be home or I'm going to be out. And, it's hard on her. It's hard on everybody, any
Yeah.
significant other, and, she's great. And she's been a great sport about that. Of like, knowing when to ask me how my night went and knowing when to just leave me be because it
Brandon,
wasn't a
you know
good
what?
one,
She's
or
watching. She's watching right now. He's like, I'm gonna shout her out a little bit.
nah, she's working
Yeah.
right now, so I know she's not
Oh,
watching, but
okay,
so we're good.
okay.
But yeah, no,
But
and that
it's
was, but it
important
was a
though,
learning
right?
curve for her, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
important
that
to have
support
that
system is
person
important.
that you got to have that support system at home because
Mm-hmm.
that you have
Yeah,
you're gonna run that call. You're like, I'm about to get fucking bitched at, right? I'm about to hear it up one
yeah,
end and down the other, and eventually you just get to the point where you're like, is this even is it worth arguing over? I'm
yeah,
just gonna quit
and
running
I'm,
calls. So you're
we
very
miss things, from time to
right,
time,
right.
and I'm home late from time to time, and but she, she's a good sport about it.
It's awesome to have the
Um,
support system, though, for
but
sure.
then on the flip side, right? Here's something that I don't hear a lot of firefighters talking about. There are times I won't go on calls. There are
Yeah,
times that I'll
there's
like, because I can sense when like things aren't right, and she's like, she see tones go off, and she's just, like we're in the middle
yeah.
of cooking dinner, cleaning the house, something, and like, I'm about to leave her hanging high and dry with something, and it's like, I don't need to go on that. Like sometimes it's more important. So you gotta weigh a balance of that too. Of
You
like
do. You
home
definitely
life's
do.
important too, and you can't just always run out the door. You can't always, and a supportive spouse it means the world to me, and I think it's important across the board. But you also got to know when to say, maybe these guys will be okay without me tonight.
Right. It's
Maybe I
nice knowing
can.
that you have that group of guys that's like these guys can take care of it, right?
Yeah, they've got this, and there's some calls that you're just not going to miss. I don't, it's just almost impossible to like, you're
Yeah.
just not going to miss that one because it's some giant,
It's yep. It's
cluster or
that
something
call.
that you've got to be at, right? But
Yeah. It's that you can hang your
you
hat on
also have
kind
to
of
know
call.
when to say, yeah, you got to know when to say like, hey, I'm just I'm gonna have a glass of wine with you and chill on the
Yep.
couch tonight, and because your relationship's important. And if you want that support system, you got to nurture some of that too, right?
They understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. Well, and don't. There's sometimes you can be late to work and miss work, but you can't miss work all the time.
No.
I've had that conversation with a couple of guys, and like,
It don't pay the
I
bills,
was late
right?
to work again. I was late to work again. I was late to work again. I'm like, you got to stop being late to work every day. You're going to get fired. Like, I know they can't fire you, but they can fire you. And like,
Right. Yeah. That whole bullshit
like,
goes out the road when
right.
yeah.
And
Like you
it's
pissed
one
on the
thing, like,
toilet seat in the bathroom, you know,
right,
and you're
right.
gone.
And then,
Like because
right.
yeah.
And, so making a living, having a job, keeping that job, man, that's important too. There'll always be another fire call. There'll always be another wreck. There'll always be another house fire. You
Yeah,
can't
it
always
doesn't
miss
stop.
work.
Yeah.
Once in a while, it's okay to be late to work, but you can't do that every day. And you can't
Right.
run out on your wife every day to run another fire alarm call. Sometimes you got to take some time for you. And we talk a lot about mental health, and we talk a lot about burnout and stressors of the job. And sometimes, like, man, you just got to say, I just can't do it today.
Right.
I'm tired.
Yeah, so you talked about like
You know,
incentives too, as far as
Mhm,
like rewarding your firefighters for, doing good, right? And
mhm.
sometimes some of that incentive is something doesn't cost you anything, just letting guys know that they're doing a good job, right? Because
Yeah.
there's nothing better than being like, listen, man, you guys did a fucking awesome job. Couldn't ask you guys to do, anything better.
Mhm,
I feel like, when they do a good job, you definitely got to let them know.
mhm.
Because I mean,
And we can all
sometimes
be
in the
better
back
at
of their
that, me
head,
included, right?
right? Because in the back of their head,
Yeah.
they're like, man, we fucked up on that. We could have been way better at
Right.
that. But like when you got that guy that's like, no, you didn't fuck up. Like this is a tough situation, and you
Mhm.
guys got it figured out.
Yeah.
And
And
I've had some
we,
guys, I've had some mentors, like not, I wouldn't even say mentors, just like guys that, at my station that were just like, and guys maybe even before that I thought that maybe didn't think that I was, we'll just say like, competent. Like, I feel like you
yeah.
start out
Right.
and you're like, man, I'm trying to impress these guys. I want them to think like, hey, this guy's here. I don't have to baby him. I know that he's going to do what he's supposed to be doing. And it's finally nice when they tell you that, right? They're like, hey, man, you did a
Mhm,
really good job on that. That was awesome. Um,
mhm.
and that doesn't
And
cost anything, right?
and
That's
we gotta be better about that, and me included, right? But we have to be better about that across the service. One of the best compliments I ever got as an officer, as a junior officer, right, a lieutenant or captain, like the chief shows up on scene and is like, I'm not taking over. Hey,
yeah,
you got it.
not taking
You got
command,
it.
right?
Right? Like that's a huge compliment. Like, no, you got it. Like, hey, I'm gonna go grab that hose line. Like, you're good. Right. And like that was a huge compliment to me. And I was like, hey, I must be not jacking this all the way up because the chief didn't come in and take the radio away. And not that I would be offended if he did, right? I was expecting that he did, right? Because that's the way things go usually. But when they come up and they're like, no, you good, man. I'm going to go play. So you seem to have this under control. So, and that's a huge compliment too for junior officers. And um, you know, hmm hmm yeah,
But see,
for
there's
sure.
a flip side to that also. So like you guys are both, Adam's a chief, you're a captain. So like me, I'm just a regular firefighter. And I think that you guys sometimes need that from us. You know, because I feel like there's and Adam, you may have even noticed that, and Brandon, same thing. Is when you go from that firefighter to that officer role, you're looked at a little different, right? You're the guy in charge. You're the guy now that you have to, if somebody's fucking up, you gotta call them out on it, right? Doesn't matter if it's your friend or not. You got to be like, you fucked up, or you're not doing that. You're the boss at that point, and that's a really tough situation. And and I think sometimes you guys really feel the stress of that, right? You're like, hey, I'm gonna about to piss these guys off, and
Well,
or
I
yeah,
have
you
doubts
know
in my
that, right?
decisions all the time, right? Like
Right.
not
So it's nice when your
whether
guys are
it's
like, "Hey, man, that was an awesome call. You
you're
did a
right.
good job on that call. Like, you did everything right. Like, you did good." And I think like you guys are like, "Damn, maybe I did do good." But maybe initially you thought you're like, "Wow, that I these guys probably think I'm an idiot." But
Well, I
it's
go
nice when
through, every call. Like I'll replay that. Like any, not,
right.
I don't mean like your average, just fenders and
Yeah.
feelings car wreck, but like any fire. Like I'll go home and I'll replay that in my mind. Of like, what did I do? What could I have done better?
You're
Who
like,
should I
that
have
should not
called?
have
Who
been
should
as
I
hard to
not have
put that
called?
fire out as it was, right?
Or did
Or
we do the right things? Did I pick the right
right.
tactics? Did I have the right vision for the scene and what was going on? And there's a lot more doubt. You get a lot more doubt as you in that officer role, I think. And that's honestly though, that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a good thing to me, because if you're not doubting yourself and questioning yourself, then you're not growing either. So I don't
Mhm.
mind having that doubt,
Yeah.
and but it can be that can be an adjustment, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. Be nice. It'd be a nice world. Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Right. Because that sounds so
Yeah. I
cliche,
mean,
right? Like when they used to say, like, you never stop learning. And like that's true, right? I mean, this shit is
100%.
evolving so much. I mean, you went from, you know, not having, a bit of like I thought last night, we're gonna get a pretty decent structure fire call up at Mountain Valley. It was
Hmm.
for an electric bicycle.
Oh
And
my.
I was like,
Yeah, those can
wow.
be
I was
pretty
like, this
nasty.
is, and
Here
you
we go.
see like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right, you're like gone on the ground, foundation, is what this is about. That, in your head, you're like, this is worst case scenario because you've seen like, but what, 10 years ago, you didn't really have stuff like that, right? These electric
Mm.
vehicles. I mean, we're talking about putting. You said 80,000 gallons of water on that semi. You're talking 80,000 gallons of water on a sedan. A
Right. Four-door
freaking sedan.
passenger car. Yeah.
Right, four-door
Yeah.
passenger car that you could normally put out with less than 750 gallons of water, right? I mean,
Right.
depending on what department you are, because like some departments need about 3,000 to put a four-door sedan out. Not calling anybody out, but now they're talking about 30, 40, 50,000 gallons of water on a car. That's no bigger than a standard car. You could put a car, regular combustion engine right next to this electric car, and you're talking 50 times the amount of water.
Well, and then you have to look at the logistics of that from not only, you're going to take you a long time to extinguish this vehicle, but, if
Right.
that's on the interstate, let's say, and I don't care whose interstate it is, if that's on the interstate, how do you get 50,000 gallons of water there? And how long is that going to take you?
You
Then that
don't,
smoke is
right?
toxic.
Right.
That smoke is toxic, not just for the guys
Yep.
up there on the nozzle like we're used to, but like potentially for your pump operator, for your incident commander. Like now you've got to have guys in cylinders because that's not just it might cause cancer in 20 years toxic. That's,
That's like
some
you
really
might
nasty
die in
stuff when
10
you have
minutes, right?
right
Like you
lithium
inhale the
and,
wrong
and
shit.
chlorine in the air now from that. And so that adds a whole nother level of complexity to that.
Right.
Yep. And so
Yeah,
you've got, all
it's
smoke is
insane.
hazardous, right? But there's definitely a spectrum of, campfire smoke to like lithium battery smoke are very different things, right? And so, yeah, that brings a lot of complexity to an incident that can really easily get out of hand. Yeah, right, right.
Right.
Yeah, that
So
stuff's pretty nasty.
we went over like what? So we went over like vehicles. So you got to think like even Adam, you've been how long have you been in the fire service? I'm sorry, I didn't get an exact like amount of years.
21 years last month.
Brennan, what do you got? Brennan, how
Thank you,
much you
sir.
got? Uh, how much you got total? Oh, come on here. So 22
22.
years. Okay, so 22 years, so you guys got a good bit of time in, right? Even if you guys look at like construction when you guys first started the construction now, right? They're out here building houses out of fucking popsicle sticks for the exact same price, right? I mean, you had guys Westerers, it's been around for a while, right? Obviously, we're not dealing with like a bunch of major new construction. So some of the house fires that we're fighting are some of these buildings were built in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We do have new construction, Some of you guys, Adam, you guys are maybe fighting some. Well, Brennan, you guys are both pretty rural, so you guys are fighting some older farmhouses, right? You guys are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, for the
construction,
most
yeah.
part, yeah, yeah, for the most
Infrastructure,
part, yeah.
yeah,
Everybody around us, we don't really, I mean, not that we wouldn't go, right, but we're not routinely going down to like Deep Creek where you got some of these like McMansions, right? But um we have this interesting mix in our area of like we have everything from like heavy timber 1800s, right, to lightweight truss. We have a fair bit of balloon frame in the middle. We've got some single story to some 3-story. We've got a few commercial with the truss roofs. But we have some prefab I-beam new construction. We have a few some in our area now. We're getting some really huge new houses that are coming from it's kind of Morgantown overflow into our area.
yeah.
Like Cheat Lake's getting too full, right? And you're seeing some of these really big mansions built in our area. And so we have a little bit of we have a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. There's some. Yeah. Yep. Yep. And there's some big houses being built up in that area, and
Right,
that's
so
going to
that
be the
poses some
new Cheat
risk,
Lake,
right?
right?
Because you go from having a typical three-company response for a single family, family dwelling, you
Mm-hmm.
know, typical three response, maybe four, having typically here, three different companies respond, and then maybe you have the tanker
Mm-hmm.
respond as your fourth. Now maybe you're
Right.
looking at it like, man, maybe we need to have five departments respond. Maybe we need to have like four departments and make sure that one of those departments, no matter what's bringing a tanker. Yeah, I feel like
Yep.
and that goes to that pre-planning, right? Um,
Right.
like
And
that's
part
it.
of that's just being aware of what's going on in your community, right? We still have
Yep,
a lot of farms, we still have a lot of open space. One thing that we're seeing a lot more of are side by side UTV accidents.
that's
So that's
true.
something that we're increasing our preparedness here for as well. We're seeing a lot
And
more
being
of
able
that
to get to
traffic.
those, right? Because it's totally
Yep,
different
exactly.
being able to get toned out to that, and you get to the end of the road, and they're
Right.
2 miles into the trail,
Yep.
right? I'm
Yep.
not
And so
walking
we,
2 miles into the trail, and if I do, what the hell am I worth when I walk in there? And we're gonna load them up on the back of the backboard and try to walk them out. So that poses some
right.
different
So
risk that
and
maybe
so we have a
having a
lot of
side by
that. We
side
have
capabilities,
exactly.
being
So
able
we
to
have a
maybe
6x6
train for that.
here, and yeah, so we have a 6x6 here, and we're actually one of our trainings next month is going to be just on that, UTV and pre-planning that,
Right.
and then not being afraid to augment that with even like so I have a side by side. A lot of our firemen do. So
Yeah.
even being able to augment some of that response capability with personal, vehicles, where
Right.
now I can instead of just having one fire department vehicle, I've got the fire department one and then that's where we transport a patient or whatever. But I
Yeah.
can, we've done this several times where like we've taken, my side by side, with an empty bed and loaded it with rope
Yep.
equipment so that we could go into, because so you have to be creative, but you also have to know what's going on in your area and be
You do.
aware of like, hey, we're building mansions in Pisgah and we've got this huge, trail system that we're seeing side by sides all the time. And, every year we see more and more, folks wreck those. And that's always a challenge because you never know. That could be a rope rescue evolution. That could be, true wilderness type of event.
Right.
And you could be walking a long way for sure.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
90, I mean, if you think about it, like 90% of what you're seeing, I mean, you're looking at a roll cage that's, you
Mhm.
know, very thin. You look at it and you're like, man, that's a roll cage. Well, then you look at it and it's some thin ass aluminum, you know, you,
Yeah.
it
I
poses
airbagged one off a couple years ago. I had a guy trapped under one, rolled over and pinned his leg, and we actually bring the rescue in with airbags to lift it off of him, to controlled lift to get him out.
Mhm.
And that was that's been 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And so that was kind of eye opening to me. It's like, oh, hey, this is we need to we need to be more intentional thinking about this.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And heavy. Right.
Right. And like, you have a regular scenario, and we even look at the same thing with, just regular vehicles, right? Then you get that,
Mm-hmm.
you look at it and you're like, how the hell did that happen, right? Well, then you start factoring the alcohol into that. And that even makes situations even
Yeah.
more difficult because you're like, all right,
Right.
normally they would have just wrecked into the tree. Now they wrecked into the tree, were drunk, and now they're on their top, right? It
Right.
changes everything. And uh,
Well,
that
one of the
that
things that we've run into too, and this is something, it's almost like um, it's almost like being downtown Morgantown when the students in the fall are getting a little
yeah,
ridiculous, right?
get a little
Where
wild.
it's
Oh,
not
home
just
game
it's
win, like
right. It's not just one buggy, right? You
right.
don't just have
You
one
have
side by side.
multiple, right? Yes.
And then everybody stops, and now you've got a crowd control problem with a bunch of folks that may or may not have a little alcohol on board, and so yeah, allegedly they might
Well,
be
and
slightly
you
inebriated,
also
and
run
so
into that
you
risk
know
too of those bystanders that want to help, right? This
right,
idiot
exactly,
that you have a guy underneath it here, maybe setting up some cribbing. We know how it goes. You don't really, sometimes you got to get a little closer than you want to be able to actually stabilize it, right? You're
yeah,
getting some cribbing stuffed underneath it here, and you got two idiots that are over here shoving on the side of it, shove
right,
the side by
right,
side on top of you, right? They're like, "We'll pick that
right,
some bitch up and just flip off of Joey, and he'll be riding in half an hour." Like
right.
right. So you got to be aware of
Mhm,
that, right? I mean, that's the
mhm,
thing. It's like, hey, we know that these guys do a memorial ride every year here.
mhm, mhm.
Right. You got to
I
know
don't, I
when to stand back and just be a
right.
bystander, right?
I don't need your help today.
Right. You got to
Right.
be a bystander. Yep.
Right, right. And I'll tell you one of the things that we did. We've got a big trail system, country roads trail system that's in our area here in Preston County, and some in DeMond County too. And
Mhm.
one of the first rides they did was in our area here in Brewston. And we decided rather than stick our head in the sand with this, we were going to be proactive. And we actually took our side by side out, loaded with equipment. I was in it. We had I had medical equipment, rope rescue equipment, patient extrication equipment, and rode to ride backwards and just handed out waters to people, as you know, here we are, we're present, we understand you're here, we're here to help you, we want you to be safe, we want you to be smart, but it allowed us to interact a lot with the
Be
folks on that ride.
proactive rather than reactive, right?
Exactly. So that was
Instead of
a
hanging
that
out
was
at
a that was a
station like,
cool
"Oh, yep, we
right.
knew it, one of those guys. We knew we were gonna flip it." But,
Right.
you were out there, right? I fully
But they
understand
loved
that.
it. The people out there riding loved it. Everybody was totally cool with us, and they were like happy to see us. And yeah, I think I gave out like 3 or 4 cases of water
Wow.
that day. Because I'm like here, like handing out, and whatever. But it was a really nice, kind of PR thing, but also just to be involved and understand the community of riders out there and see what trails they're on and what they're doing, that would be my suggestion to anybody that's having a lot of these UTV rides. Get out there and
I agree.
if you've got a fire department side by side, take it, and be present and talk to them and see where they're riding, see what the trails look like, is you'll get a better understanding for what your capabilities are by being out there with them than you ever will sitting at the firehouse waiting on them
Right,
to,
and
to
now
pile
how
one
how
up.
great
So
does that look that you guys are are out there supporting the community rather than um, bashing the event, right? Because just because
Mhm.
you got a couple bad apples doesn't mean that, you know, the
Mhm.
whole thing has got to be looked at in a negative, view because some people
Well,
because some people are just out to enjoy themselves, right? You pay a lot of
of
money for
course,
these things. You want to, you want to be able to enjoy it and have fun. So,
of course, and whether they're being responsible or irresponsible,
yep,
they can
and
wreck it
capping,
either
right?
way. But either way, it's going to be my problem. So I might as well be proactive and
Absolutely.
be upfront and be prepared for it,
No,
right? And
that's awesome
understand what we're doing, and
to be in the community, like
so
right, because at the end of the day, it's not. Mm, I always say too, like it is our firehouse because we're responsible for taking care of it, but it's not ours, right? We just kind of run it,
right,
right? Like so, we're here for the community. Like
right,
this isn't a boys' club that we came up with and said,
right.
hey, we're gonna. Oh, okay, yeah. Brandon's like, what
It's
do you mean?
not.
I just came here to hang out and play poker. But yeah, yeah, but but you know what I mean. Like so, and I've seen that before. Some people are like, yeah, whatever. They're not going to tell us what to do. It's our firehouse. Like I think that to be involved in the community and let them know like this is your fire department, right? Like
Mhm.
we're just the guys that are here that are going to respond in the truck. We have the training to do it, to be able to come and help you. Like we don't own this. This is your guys. Without you guys and you guys helping and stuff, we're nothing. Like so I,
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think
that's
we all
great.
agree, right?
Yep.
Like I think we would all agree that if Mountaineer Field and it's 70 some thousand people on
Yep.
Saturday is in your first due, you're an idiot if you don't pre-plan that. If you don't have any
Absolutely.
plans worked
Right.
up, if you don't look at it, you're failing at your job, right? But how many of us are doing the same thing on a much smaller scale in our volunteer departments where
Yep.
we're not out here on these rides, or we're not at that concert venue, or we're not, we've never been in this bar or this restaurant or this, you have to at least have some idea. If you're not, you have to be out there in the community and seeing what's going on, and even if it's not in an official capacity, right? Just, you don't have to go in there with your Class A shirt on and buttoned up and be like, yeah, I'm a fireman, whatever. Just being there and
Yeah, you're like,
understanding
I
what the
need a
event's
handshake
about and
from
seeing.
everybody in here to thank me for
Right,
my service.
right,
Like,
right. Please thank me
I'm
for my
about to
service.
be pissed off.
Right. Yeah.
So,
But I mean, just being aware of what's going on, knowing where the new construction is in your neighborhood, and knowing, what events are happening,
right.
you walk into somewhere and you're like, oh, well, holy cow, like this is way bigger than I would have thought it is. And there's only two X's in this whole place, like,
Right.
just,
Yeah, yeah. So my biggest thing, and I've tried to like some people have a very very hard time grasping this, and I don't understand why. Is I mean I would like to think that my department is very respected department, right? That if the community felt that like if something happened they could call us. I'm sure that everybody feels like that that's in here, but it took what years and years and years of guys way before us that busted their ass
Mhm.
and and got the job done to earn that kind of respect that wasn't just given.
Mhm.
Somebody just didn't look at firefighters and say, all right, yep, these guys these guys are gods, these guys are put here just to come like save us. It took random ordinary guys doing extraordinary things, right? um
Mhm.
to get that kind of respect. And I can guarantee you what, you could have the best department, the best, you know, respect out of anybody. Somebody could say that is the best department. You go out on a call and you fuck up, it's gone. It's gone in 5 seconds. You do something just really bad, and the community looks at that. They're like, "Wow." They're like, "What just happened?" And that third, we've been running for since 1926, and all those guys that put in all that time and gained
Mhm.
all that respect over the years, that's gone.
Mhm.
That's gone because you had me, would you say me or somebody else that just, you know,
Mhm.
messed up,
Yeah.
either neglect or just being an idiot. And it just takes 5 seconds to lose that trust. It doesn't.
100%. And I
I don't
and I
think
think
people
I think
realize
that's
that,
the
right?
that's the job. That's the, Cap was talking a little bit ago about, the incentive, right? But that's what you have to live up to. That's your task, right? You were given this gift. You didn't earn it, right?
Right.
And the only way for you to earn it is to keep it unblemished and respected as you found it, as it was given to you. And I think that's our what we're called on in this industry, whether it's fire, EMS, law enforcement, right? It's to, you were handed this, you know, beautiful tradition and respect and honor, and it's our job to just not screw that up, right?
Right,
And build
because
on
when
it
you
if you
wear that
can.
shirt out there, right? When you
Yep.
wear that Brewston
Yep.
Brandonville shirt and you walk into the grocery store or you're
Mm-hmm.
walking down the street and people look and they go, man, that guy's in the fire department. If something happens, this guy's here. We can rely on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very respectful, uh, you know, position to be in, right? Like people look at us and they say, man, this guy is going to help us if something happens. But
Right.
That's exactly right. When you wear that T-shirt out
Right.
and you go
That's
up
right.
and you scream at this 16-year-old girl because she put fucking pickles on her double cheeseburger and you asked her not to and you throw
Right.
it at her, well, guess what? Yeah.
Wow, man, that was really specific. I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but
that.
like the reason why I said that too is because like I feel like fast food workers just get like bashed up pretty hard, like or retail,
Yeah.
right? People always want to take it out on somebody. But like you said, yeah, no, I love pickles. So it doesn't even make sense. Yeah, they're trying to relate me to this. So but like you said, they don't look and they say, oh man, it's that Johnny kid, fucking asshole. They say, man, this fucking West Ever volunteer firefighter down here was down here like just
Right.
totally disrespected this girl. Those guys are a bunch of assholes, right? But what did you do to deserve to get thrown into that asshole, category that she
Right.
just that
And
she just
and I would
because of what
and I
I
would take
did,
that
right?
I would
Yeah.
take that one step farther. It's not even just Westover. I think a lot of folks, they don't even see what your department is or where
They
you're
just see
from, right?
firefighter.
They just see firefighter, right? And so you're not just holding up that tradition and respect for
Yep.
your department. You're holding it up for all 75,000 of us in the United States, right? That are
Yeah.
out here doing the job and doing it the right way. And that you got to earn that every day, right? You don't get any free passes on that. You don't get to, we all have bad days and we all make mistakes, but like you got to earn that every day. And that, that T-shirt that Brandon wants so bad, he's got to earn that day in and day out, not just when you sign your name on the dotted line, right?
Yeah. Right. Because it
And we'll
doesn't
take you.
matter if you're. It doesn't matter if you're paid. It doesn't matter if you're volunteer, right? Like I've
Yep.
always said this. When that dispatcher says helps on the way, or they say my house is on fire and they say, okay, the fire department's been contacted. They don't say, we're sending the volunteer fire department.
Mhm.
Right. They don't say, do you want a paid department or do you want the volunteers? Like, they don't
Right.
say that. So whenever you show up, you show up and you act like you deserve to be there. You know what I mean? You're going into
Right.
people's houses. Nothing burns me up. I got a potty mouth. I don't have a filter on here, but yeah. But I go into somebody's house. I don't start throwing the F word around. I don't start busting people's balls inside the houses. We're there for a job. We go there, we do it, and then once we get back in the truck, that's a time. Like that's a good time to
Right.
talk about stuff, right? You also don't talk about
Right.
how dirty somebody's house is inside. You don't know what that person's going
Right.
to. Right. We went to some
Right.
people's houses and we're like, how are you living here? But we
Right.
don't know their
Yeah. And I
financial situation. We don't know their mental. I mean, depression. Sometimes you see some bad
Sure.
situations, right?
Sure.
So I
Well,
mean,
and
you
and
gotta.
nobody calls you because everything's going right.
Right, exactly. They're calling
Nobody.
you because this
They're
could be
only
the
calling
worst
you
day of
because
their
things are
life.
wrong. Right.
Right.
And they're only calling. You're only there because something's not right. And so,
And you
I
don't
think.
want them not to call you because they're gonna say, "Oh my God, these guys are gonna come judge me."
Right. Right.
Right.
That's exactly right. Hmm. Well, what I comment that I was going to make earlier was that, professionalism doesn't come with a paycheck.
No,
You
it
you
doesn't.
can
No.
be professional whether you get paid or not, and that has nothing to do with, you need to be a master of the craft and a true master of this job, a professional, whether you're getting paid or not. And that's what's tasked with us. That's what the public expects. That's what I expect as a leader in my fires. In my little department, like I expect you to be professional, do the job, do it
Right,
right.
you hold guys to
I
the higher standard.
I
You don't
don't
care if they're
I don't
volunteer or what,
Yeah, that
right?
doesn't make any difference to me whether you're
Exactly.
volunteer or not. There's still a right way and a wrong way to do the job,
Right.
and I'm committed and beholden to the idea that we're going to do it the right way. We're going to have the best fire department in the state. That's what we're going to do here, and you know
Right, and so that's
that's
funny you brought that up, right? Because we've
Mhm.
had people in the chat before. We love the chat. We've always had these people that are like, "Is West ever the best department in Mon County?" And I'm
Well,
like,
next
"Wow,
time they
way to
ask
go
you,
ahead,
tell them it's
way to go
Brewston.
ahead and put me on the spot like that, right?" But and this is my yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
like this is my response to this, right? If you don't believe that you're the best firefighter on that fire ground and you don't believe that your department is the best, then, what are you doing, right? Cuz when we show up, I'm like, "Hey, we're going to get the job done." I don't go in here thinking like, "Man, this department's way better than us." You know,
Right,
you're going to
right,
be biased. I don't care what anybody says. You're going to be biased
right.
because you should trust your guys. You should trust your training and your knowledge, and say, we're going to be the ones going to go get the job done. Not saying that I'm going to go try to knock Adam down to get the hand line so I can put the fire out, but it's like I just have to think in my head like we're the guys that are here. We're going to get the job done. And
And I don't know that.
go ahead, Trish.
Sorry about it. Yeah, I don't know that we are the best, but we're going to keep working every day
Right,
until we
but
are,
if you
and
but if
that's
you didn't say
you
that
know
you were the best, I'd say, well, what the hell? You know what I mean? That's
right,
what
right,
my answer is to people, and they say, "Well, it's
right.
Westover the best," or "What's some of the?" And every once in a while you'll be like, who's the best firefighters in Mon County?" And I'm like, well, like I don't think anybody is the best, right? You could be the best rope tech guy around.
Mm,
Brandon could be the best interior guy around. I could be the best at like fucking selling tickets for a chicken barbecue. Like I don't, you know,
right,
taking pickles off a
right,
hamburger. But
right.
I don't think that anybody's the best, and I think that that's like a crazy thing to even ask people. But like I said, like I would think that you should have, you do, right? If you
Yeah,
don't think that you're the
yeah.
best, then there's something wrong. Like, right,
100%,
right. Well, so
100%.
that's great you said that. And that
Well,
goes with their
well, and
belonging, right? Like, whenever
here's
you
the
go
thing
in there,
where here's the
go ahead,
thing that
Chief.
I never understood with that. Right? Who asked you? Right? Joe fireman or Joe paramedic. Who asked you? Nobody
Yeah,
asked you to judge them. They asked you to come help. You're here to help. You're not here to look down on their living situation
right,
or how much money they have or don't have or whatever. That's not what you're here for. And if that's so nobody asked you. You're here to help out and do as much good as you can do. And don't right. You're here to help things get better, not try to make it worse or look down on them for not being better already, right? Because if it were better, you wouldn't be here.
right. And that
That's
goes the same with like
I
what,
mean
like
that
preserving property, right? Like, because you go
right,
into this person's house and you say, well, this house is a shithole. Just because you had a little bit of fire, go up one of the interior walls, you don't need to go and tear down every single wall in the house.
right,
You know what I mean? Like, just because you say, well, this place is a
right.
shithole, you wouldn't go into a mansion and try to do it. You wouldn't go into a mansion and just start
Oh,
taking
oh, I've
walls in.
seen that done. Oh, I've seen
Right,
that done.
right. You see what I'm
I
saying there,
saw
right?
somebody throw it. Yeah, I've seen that done in a nice house too, and I've seen the fire department write a pretty nice sized check to replace some
you know?
damage, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, you got to
we got to be
respect
better than
people's
that.
belongings. Like I said, you right. Well, yeah. I mean, people are welcoming you into their house. They're
Mm,
calling you because they need help. If they didn't need help, they wouldn't call you.
that's
And
right.
they don't expect this guy to show. I mean, we've showed up before on a stove fire, right? And that comes with experience. Showed up on a stove fire. I mean, it was toned out as a structure fire. We get there. Uh, it was an electric stove. Just so happened that like one of the oven mitts got stuck on there, right? Oven mitt caught on fire.
Mm,
Went up the wall, got in
mm,
there, got it knocked, and our chief was like, "Yo, let's take a look at the situation. We don't need it. We don't need to just go in and just start bashing the wall, right? Let's check some things. You're
mm,
taking some stuff apart. You don't have to destroy stuff. Like we were called out on a structure fire. We go in. It wasn't a fire. It's one of those false alarms. We go in. You smell something burning. You walk into the back bedroom. You can't find the furnace. You look. They've taken like some sheets of plywood and just kind of
mm,
screw. Well, instead of me just sitting here saying, all right, I'm going to take this Halligan and we're going to pry this completely off here and destroy this, somebody get a drill. Somebody get their
right.
screwdriver out,
Right.
right? Take stuff apart. I mean, these people aren't expecting when they call the fire department to come in and it looks like their fucking house is hit by a tornado, right? I mean, they're here
I mean,
because
we are
they
good
don't
at
want
breaking
their stuff
stuff, though.
right. They don't they don't want their house torn up. That's the reason why they called you, right? They don't want to lose stuff.
Right.
Preserve, right? I mean,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, right. I mean, sometimes you have to be. It goes to
Mm,
right, because I mean, you go on what
right.
forcible entry, right? So you show up
Right.
for a call. You look at it. You say, okay, do I have to force a door? Can I? We went on a call one time. It was a medical call, as an overdose, and we get up there and we're looking around. We're like, the door's locked. This person's inside. They were able to be viewed from the outside, so that's how we knew the situation. But we're like, man, we're gonna have to take the door. Well, people
Mm,
start looking around. The window's wide open.
yeah.
We
I
could have
got a
just
funny story
completely,
about that one
we could have
from
completely
my younger
wrecked.
days.
We could have completely wrecked this door, knocked this thing
Yeah.
clean off the hinges, right? No, send a guy. Look inside, make sure the scene's safe. Have a guy hop through the window, go over,
So,
unlock the door. I'm sure the landlord was probably very appreciative that we just didn't absolutely destroy this door
right.
because there was no
And
reason.
that was,
And something
that
else
was
you got to
partly
think
though the
about,
difference in the way we were raised, right?
right?
And like I think different
Preserving,
departments do that differently, right?
right? Because
But
if I
like here,
destroy this door now, yes, we've removed this man out of the apartment. Now, how am I going to resecure this place, right? We've done taken the door
mm,
clean off the hinges. Passive. You know, try to start passive first, and then get into the aggression.
years ago, I was a young fireman, brand new EMT, and we go out on a medical call. This was up in the Wheeling area. We go out on a medical call, and we get toned with fire department to go help them get in this house, and it was some kind of overdose or something, and we didn't really know what was going on, but there was a woman in the house, whatever. Well, I'm 18. I weigh 150 pounds or
Like, I'm about
something.
to
They're like,
boot
hey,
this fucking door.
well, they said, hey, we found a back window in the kitchen. It was open. And they said, so
Mm,
your skinny butt's going through the door, because I'm the young skinny one, right?
right.
And then they're like, so you're going through the window, right? And so I had to climb through this kitchen window over a sink full of dirty dishes, and it's like land face first on
Yeah.
the kitchen floor, And I'm like, okay, well, so I like climbing through here to try not to get all the dirty dishes on
Yep.
me and whatever. Laying on the floor, and I make a left hand turn from the kitchen in the living room, and here's this woman stark naked looking at me standing there, and I had no idea what to do. I'm like, let me just sneak around you here real quick and go unlock that front door.
Right.
I opened that door, and the chief and the EMT and stuff, they come rocking in, and I walked right back out the front door. I was like, I don't know what's going on in there, but y'all gonna have to figure that one out without me, because
You're like,
I
I
was too
wasn't actually here. I was allegedly here. You guys actually got in because the door was
I
unlocked.
was too embarrassed to walk back in there for a minute, because I'm like, what I'm in here by myself. What do I do with this?
Yeah,
Like,
you're just like, I basically broke into this woman's house. You're like, I
right,
just slid right up through the window and then said, hey, hold on a second, let me open the door up.
right, right.
Yeah, that's super funny.
Ah, the funny
So
stories are good, right?
yeah, those are hilarious. All right, so I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. So like, we'll kind of try to summarize everything up, I guess. Try to do a little recap. So we went over, all three departments that you were in. We kind of went you going up through your medical career, going up to be a paramedic, and your kind of rise to the top, being chief. A little bit of your experience with being chief, and kind of your opinion on it too. I mean, obviously, it's not a cakewalk. You just don't sign a pit. You just don't write your name at the bottom of a paper and throw it into a stack, right? You're also running calls, boots on the ground, and
Yeah, for
you
sure,
know, you got to lead from the front, right? I mean, you can't be up on a pedestal just watching your guys do stuff. I mean, you gotta lead.
for sure.
What do you think, Brandon? So
Anybody still watching us out there? Or we
yeah,
bored? Have we bored them all to
we
tears
still
yet?
got some people. Now we still got some people that are live and stuff watching. And the great thing about this is the way that we stream this is like anybody can go back and watch it on the podcast
Nice.
page. So like that way, like if your wife missed it, she can go back and she can say, "Man, I wonder if Adam was talking trash."
Yep. Yep.
So Bernie, you're supposed to come up with some questions to ask, like I do. So I got like 3 questions that I normally ask at the end of every podcast. So
All
Brendan's
right.
supposed to come up with some of his own. Did you? All right.
That's a good one. Oh, so there's a lot so here's the answer to that one. There's a lot I tell myself to do differently. I just don't expect that I'd listen to myself.
Right.
Right. Because being a 17-year-old, I already know everything kind of guy, type A, I think we've all been through it, right, at some point. And I don't know that I listen to myself, but, you know, I guess my advice would be take all the advice you can get, take all the classes you can manage, and slow down. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't need to make every call. You got plenty of time, and don't worry. You'll see more than you wanted to in the long run. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The things you're sitting out on the interstate for 3 hours staring at, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. No. Not even a. Not even a. Not even a pause.
Way more good than
Um.
bad, right? I mean,
Well.
think of the difference. So the way that I would look at that is there's probably some scenarios or situations where you look at and you're like, maybe if I wasn't there, things would have went a little bit differently, right?
Yeah. So I. So
Maybe
I.
I was there
One
in
of
the
the
right
things that.
time to be able to do what needed to be done to make the situation better.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've done a bad job of, and this is EMS and fire, probably law enforcement too. Um. This idea that we're here to save the day
Like the
or
cure
or
all, like
or
you call
be
911
heroes
as
or
the
any of
cure
that
all, right?
that stuff. Well, no, I mean what we talk about internally, or the pressure we feel internally to
Oh,
to you know
sure.
to be that guy, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be thumping and bumping and saving lives, and kissing babies and hanging with ladies, and that's going to be my fire life, right? Right. And I think that's a lot of pressure to
No, it
put on
absolutely
somebody.
is because when this
And I
woman
think that's
calls at
wrong,
what 3 o'clock
right?
in the morning because her husband's in cardiac arrest, right? She goes, "I'm gonna call 911." She's expecting
And
this young 18-year-old EMT to come in here and magically cure her husband's.
Right. Right. And so one of the things that I think right. And so one of the things that I think that I've kind of learned is that, and this is a little philosophical and it's a little depressing, so bear with me because it'll get better at the end. But I think the baseline condition of humanity is suffering. That it's always been that way, and that suffering is much more the norm. And so, when you look back through human history, slavery, war, death, plague, famine, natural disaster, that's all part of our history. And it's something that happens to all people all the time. And we generally live a pretty comfortable life by comparison. But if you understand that the baseline is tragedy and suffering, then anything you can do to make it better is a plus. You don't have to save the day. You don't have to be, Johnny Gage, right? Like you don't have to be those guys. You don't have to be Rescue 49. Like Ladder 49. You don't have to do that, right? All you have to do is make that suffering a little less, and you're doing the right thing. And so I think that matters, right? Pause are dead here. Yeah, go ahead. Oh man. If I could be remembered for just one thing, what would it be? Yeah, dependability, big one, right? I agree. Um, yeah, yeah. Caring's a big one, right? For sure. I mean, I think, yeah, man. I think it'd be dependability or caring. I don't know. I don't know if it. I don't know which one wins on that, but like, I think it'd have to be like, yeah, man. He's there, and we can rely on him. Right. That matters. Right. Yeah, and I think I hope that whenever I'm remembered as a brother, right? Like this is a family to me, and so if guys look back on me years from now and know that like I was part of the family, and then I'm happy with that too. Hmm.